Enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday,
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock. Welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. For the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Right, joining me in the next hour, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton. In a few moments' time, we'll be going head-to-head in the clash with political commentator Lee Harris and also political commentator Joanna Jarjou. Right, coming up, Nana's Niggle. Well, today, I'm only chatting about slave play. Do you remember that one? Blackout nights after actor Kit Harington defended it, says it doesn't discriminate against white people. Then for my outside guest this week, I'm joined by the founder of Patients Lives Matter, Jay Patel, whose son Balram died at the age of 30. Jay believes his son will still be alive if his parents had been able to get a second opinion from another doctor. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. 1 minute past 3, our top stories this hour. Tommy Robinson's supporters say he's been arrested under anti-terror laws. It follows a rally in central London which attracted thousands of people yesterday. A complaint was later made after a film was allegedly shown to the crowd in breach of a High Court order. Posting on social media, his supporters said he's being held by police using powers afforded to them under the Terrorism Act. Manchester's mayor is urging people not to rush to judgment following Thursday's incident at the airport there. Andy Burnham's comments follow the publication of new video obtained by Manchester Evening News, which appears to show a violent altercation in the lead-up to a suspect being kicked by a police officer. That constable involved is now under criminal investigation for assault. Mr Burnham says it's a complicated situation with two sides. Former Met Detective Peter Blexley agrees.
There's a number of people that look really daft this morning who were very quick to rush to judgment. with absolutely appalling language being pointed in the direction of certain police officers. And this incident now, which I again reiterate, we still have not seen all of, is going to test, of course, our police, the Independent Office of Police Conduct, the Crown Prosecution Service, the Greater Manchester Police. And I would say, where's the Home Secretary? Where's the Prime Minister?
Priti Patel has become the 5th MP to enter the Tory leadership race. The former Home Secretary says she can unite the party and turn it back into a winning machine. She joins James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat and Mel Stride, running to replace Rishi Sunak. Nominations close tomorrow. Former Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party, Brendan Clark-Smith, told us Ms Patel will be popular with members.
Is a good lineup there. But I think if you look at Priti Patel and particularly a relationship with party members as well, they felt very unloved, some of them fairly demoralised after the election campaign. They need somebody who can pick them up again, someone with a bit of vision, someone who's a real blue-blooded Conservative. And I think Priti Patel, she actually fits that description pretty well, I'd say.
Well, that's his view, but these voters that we spoke to in Lichfield seem to have a different opinion.
I don't think I like the lady too much. No. And her views and things.
I'm sure she's a very pleasant individual and I wouldn't want her as a leader if my life depended on it.
She's just not a very good politician. Yeah. And it's not what we need now.
What for you does the Tory party need?
David Cameron back.
I think she can be quite aggressive in a manner. I don't like some of the things that she's suggested.
With a useless Home Secretary, she's going to be a useless leader for the Conservative Party. I refuse to vote for her.
Water bosses who repeatedly allow sewage to be dumped illegally will face criminal charges under the new government. Environment Secretary Steve Reed warned that they will also be stripped of their bonuses as part of tougher regulations. He says customers will receive refunds if money earmarked for sewage system investment is not spent on that purpose.
If water bosses keep pumping these levels of raw sewage into our waterways, they'll face criminal charges. We'll give the regulator the power they need to ban the payment of the multi-million-pound bonuses they've been awarding themselves despite overseeing this kind of catastrophic failure. And we're going to ring-fence customers' money that is earmarked for investment in improving the sewage infrastructure so that if it's not spent on that, it gets refunded back to customers in discounts off their bills.
The Foreign Secretary is condemning a rocket strike in the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights, which killed 12 people, including children. David Lammy said we're deeply concerned about the risk of further escalation and destabilisation. Israel released this footage of air attacks being carried out against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon overnight. The country has vowed to inflict a heavy price after a rocket struck a football pitch in the village of Majd al-Shams, the deadliest attack on Israeli territory since the start of the conflict. Labour is set to overhaul planning rules to build 1.5 million homes in 5 years. Writing in The Observer, Angela Rayner said delivering social and affordable houses at scale is her top priority. This week, the Deputy PM and Housing Secretary will announce plans to bring back mandatory housing targets. She'll also outline a focus on grey belt land, building on disused car parks and wasteland. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's coming up to 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before we get stuck into the debate over the next hour, let me introduce you to my clashers. Joining me today, political commentator Lee Harris and also political commentator Joanna Georgiou. Right, here's what's coming up. That's such a nice name. It's lovely. Right, former Home Secretary Priti Patel has become the 5th Conservative MP to join the leadership race, promising to unite the party and turn it back into a winning machine. That's if there's any of them left. We'll be debating who is your choice for Tory leader, or do you even care? Then reports from the Telegraph claim the Prime Minister has held talks with Spanish Prime Minister for a free movement deal, although he rejected that he would consider the other points. But we were discussing, will Sir Keir Starmer drag us back into the EU? Also this hour, unions are demanding that civil servants must be allowed to work from home. Oh, I'm asking you, should this be allowed? I mean, who's in charge? Don't we pay them? And we'll be discussing Labour's £20 billion financial black hole claim. Were they really unaware? Tell me what you think. Get in touch. gbviews.com/your say. Right, so let's get stuck into the clash. Former Home Secretary Priti Patel has become the 5th MP to enter the Tory leadership race. She says that she will unite the party and turn it back into a winning machine. She joins James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat and also Mel Stride running to replace Rishi Sunak, and nominations will close tomorrow. So to get some reaction from those on the street, I'm joined by GBNews reporter Jack Carson in Lichfield. Jack Carson, it looks lovely out there. So what are people saying on the street in Michael Fabricant's constituency of Lichfield? Did he keep his seat?
No, well, this is the interesting point now. This is why we're here in Lichfield today, because, of course, Michael Fabricant lost his seat. You know, he'd held it since 1992. He lost it here in the election because of, you know, the Conservatives here dropped 30 points in that poll, and Reform got 20% of the vote share here. So this is very much one of those seats where some Conservative voters that had kept Michael Fabricant in this seat since 1992, for some reason, whatever that reason was, you know, differing ones as we've heard over the election period, chose to support someone else, whether it was moving to the Labour Party, whether it was moving to Reform. And so when you have now this leadership race within the Conservative Party, of course, Priti Patel being the latest person to throw her hat into the ring, this is where, you know, the people on the ground here, are they convinced by someone like Priti Patel to lead the Conservative Party back into government? Would she be someone who could maybe win their vote back? Of course, we know she's standing on that ticket of trying to unite the party, but she's maybe distancing herself from others in the way that she wants to go about rebuilding that party. One of those being to democratise it. She says she would give members the opportunity to have a democratically elected party chairman and also give them a greater voice and role within policy. And it's here on the street to the people that we've been speaking to where we've heard that really the policy, this enfranchisement that they felt towards the party, which maybe is one way forward for the Conservatives to rebuild. But take a listen to what people on the street have told us today.
He's just not a very good politician. And it's not what we need now.
What for you does the Tory party need?
David Cameron back.
Because he's useless. She always has been useless. She put in this random business which cost the taxpayer a lot of money, and it never happened. See, it's a rotten party, always has been. It's been a rotten party since Cameron got Prime Minister. When he had an alliance with the Lib Dems, and what did the Lib Dems do? Absolutely nothing.
I don't really care about them at the moment. They're not relevant, are they? They're just fighting amongst themselves, so, you know.
I'm not sure. I think the fact that there are so many candidates running is a worry itself. You know, there's no... That just says to me there's no unity. They really ought to, like, have these conversations behind closed doors, agree the leader between themselves, or perhaps two, and then have a vote. Otherwise, it's just going to get even more divisive, and they're going to be arguing about things over which now, because of what they've done in the past, they have no control.
So there you go, real mix of views there. I mean, this is the problem the Conservative Party maybe have in this leadership election, because you've got that support that went towards the Lib Dems maybe in the more centre ground, but then you have, of course, had such a surge towards Reform. So how does the next party either balance out trying to bring both sides back together? Certainly in Priti Patel's pitch, you know, that she's confirmed over the past 24 hours, she's talked about turning to Conservative values, those strong policies to bring the public back. She says she wants to utilise the members on the ground is a way to try and beat the Lib Dems, beat Reform at the next election. But yeah, she's put her pitch forward, but still plenty of pictures from other candidates to come.
Thank you very much. There's Jack Carson there reporting live from Lichfield. Well, so those are the candidates so far. I mean, you heard what the viewers and the people in Lichfield said, but let's get started. Let's welcome again to my clashes political commentator Lee Harris, also political commentator Joanna Georgiou. I'll start with you, Lee Harris. The Tory party, a lot of people think they're toast. I actually heard what one of the viewers said, that there's so many of them going for it that in the end it'll become divisive again and they're still fighting like cats in a sack.
Yeah, I quite like the comment from the chap who said, don't really care at the moment. I think there's an element of truth to that. I think they need to just be quiet for a little bit, sort themselves out. No, I appreciate they've got to do a leadership contest, but I think it is quite, even though I am a little bit bothered about who gets it, actually, because I think it has a really important impact on what happens to the future of the Conservatives and Reform. Especially Reform, I think, because if they get a kind of one-nation centrist leader in, I think that would be brilliant for Reform. I think if they get a right-wing candidate in, maybe Priti Patel or I wouldn't say James Cleverly, but maybe a little bit of James Cleverly.
Suella Braverman?
The reason I haven't mentioned Suella Braverman...
Why?
...is because she is not... I've heard, I don't know if this is completely true, but she has not got... She got zero support from zero MPs at the moment. So she's not even going to get put forward to the membership as it stands. So my guess is she'll probably move to Reform, and I think she'll be a very big asset to Reform.
Yeah.
So, and there's two polls I've seen. So there's one poll, which was a lot less people, about 750 members, who put Kenny Badenoch as the lead contender, and I saw a much bigger poll with Conservative Post that put Suella Braverman way out in front of the rest, and quite rightly so. She's popular with the membership.
I was there the day you turned, the day you said, oh, you supported Tories, then in that same show you changed your mind.
I did.
Joanna Georgiou.
Well, to be honest, it doesn't really excite me, and I don't think it excites a lot of the country as well, from what you can see from the Vox Pops. Like we said, people just aren't bothered. We want to move on, and we want to move on with the change that we've all voted for by a landslide. I think somebody like Priti Patel, you know, putting herself forward is kind of fanciful, really, and kind of wishful thinking, because I think that she forgets that people still remember that she had her fingers firmly on a lot of the things that actually happened over the last 14 years, and really pivotal stuff as well. I know that we talk about Rwanda. She started the whole thing with Rwanda. I know that Rishi Sunak obviously bears the brunt of it now, and we say, oh, you didn't get Rwanda over the line, but she started it. But also, even things like net migration, the fact that she, along with Boris Johnson, was the key architect to changing some of the rules that made it easier for us to have record numbers of migration. And if you're really going to run on that ticket, which the Tories have been beating that drum for so long on migration, you're not going to go back to the person who actually implemented some of these plans that made it then a slippery slope that's ended up with the Tories
Well, if you are going backwards, then you might go backwards to Tony Blair, who made the rules such that this could happen in any case. So it depends how far you want to go back. But, yeah, I mean, in terms of the leadership, though, if you had to pick one of the so-called potential leaders that are there, so we've got... There's a list of people: Tom Tugendhat,
Mel Stride.
The problem with the Tories is that I actually think that some of the people who could have been good opposition leaders, like, for example, maybe Penny Mordaunt, I didn't think was that bad. I don't mind Tom Tugendhat. I think that it's actually going to be smarter for them to get a one-nation Tory, because we've seen that in terms of the Labour Party, they've done better when they've had more of a centrist leader moving on from Jeremy Corbyn. So I actually think that it would be better for them, rather than taking the bait from Reform. I don't actually think it's going to have that much of an effect. I think that they need to go down the middle ground, but then be firm on things that people, you know, who are notoriously, or I guess traditionally conservative, feel are conservative values, rather than pandering to the far right.
Far right. Although...
Well, they are the far right. What else would you call them?
Who's the far right, sorry?
Reform.
No, they're not. That's ridiculous.
What else are they?
Far right? Why are they the far right?
Are they centrist?
What is far right?
Well, they're just right-wing.
Well, hang on. What is far right to you? What
the extreme
far right?
Nigel Farage, I would say, is far right. I mean, he's not exactly centrist on a lot of stuff.
I would say far right would be sort of like Hitler. That's far right.
That's real far right.
That's proper far right.
I think a lot of people, based on the stuff that Reform have come out with, but obviously people disagree all the time when I say this, you know, on this programme, but there's a big chunk of this country who believe that some of the things that the Reform leaders and Reform members have said have been racist. That's not to say that every single supporter of Reform is racist, but in terms of the policies that they've put forward.
Yeah, you could say that about the Labour Party, though. You could say that about...
Well, there's a reason why they've got that reputation. And I'm not saying that every Reform... Before people come at me on Twitter...
coming at you. They'll have to deal with me first, get past me. I'm a lot scarier. But listen, what I was trying to say was... I've forgotten it now because somebody...
Well, this is the more interesting part of the conversation, right? So the more interesting part of the conversation is who's going to be the best person to... or let me just say, the direction of travel for the Conservatives and how that's going to affect reform and where that is best placed. I completely disagree with you when you say you kind of take the liberal centrist view, like the Rory Stewart view, that it's better for the Conservatives to move to the centre. I think it's demonstrably false that is the case. So a quarter of 2019 Conservative voters went to reform. The reason the Conservative Party lost the last election is because Conservative voters did not come out to vote for them. They were angry.
But can I just say,
I think that you are giving the Conservative Party too much credit. I think people voted Reform simply for the policies. British people
I agree with that.
Aren't stupid. They would have listened to what Reform had to say. They would listen to the Conservatives and they would have listened to the Labour Party. And to be fair, they were not all saying the same thing.
No, I completely agree with you on
If anything,
that.
the Conservative parties were beginning to sound like Labour, and seeing as you knew the Conservatives were never going to win, you might as well vote.
But when you look at
like
recent history, and when you look at, I know that obviously David Cameron is not my favourite person either, but when you look at David Cameron, even Boris Johnson to an extent, I think Boris Johnson obviously kind of moves with the tide depending on what he thinks public opinion is. You know, he was actually naturally a Remainer, and then all of a sudden he was a staunch Brexiteer because he knew that that's what would get him in a powerful position behind closed doors. But what I'm saying is that in recent history, when you look at the Conservative leaders that have actually been really successful, like David Cameron and Boris Johnson, they haven't been in Suella Braverman's camp or nearer to reform.
Well, we'll come back to that, but I'm not sure. I think possibly the reason why the Tories lost is because they were not being Conservative, which is where they lost the majority of their votes. That is shown out by a lot of the figures, but they were also they literally were in hock with the Labour Party. It felt like it because their policies were very similar. That is my view. What do you think? gbnews.com/your say. But will Sir Keir Starmer drag us back into the EU? Because reports from the Telegraph claim that the Spanish Prime Minister made a case for an agreement allowing Spanish young people to live in the UK in private talks with Keir Starmer at the European Summit 2 weeks ago, and the Labour leader apparently rejected the proposal. But the thing is, you can't do one thing for one country, you have to do it for all of them. Joanna Jarju, what do you think?
I think it's a brilliant idea, and I know that people are going to come at Keir Starmer and say, oh, he's going to drag us back into the EU, and this is all part of kind of like the first stage of a long-term plan, but I don't actually think that that's the case. Clearly, this is something that the Spanish PM has brought to him, and I think that because Keir Starmer has other things that are actually in the British interest that he wants to also put to Spain and other European countries, he's almost got to start to do that negotiation, and you've got to kind of... I think people forget that. Even part of the Brexit negotiations, sometimes in negotiations you've got to concede on certain things, but we're just not comfortable with that as a country. We think we're going to go in, bulldoze and cherry pick, and that's never the case. And there's really important things, particularly for farmers, for example, you know, in terms of checks on animal products and having a mutually kind of, I guess, like a level playing field in terms of recognising qualifications that are going to be really important to us. So he'll have this in the back of his mind, and realistically, when you look at that demographic of who voted for Brexit, this is going to be really welcome news. I'm just gutted that I've just turned 30, so by the time this comes in, I won't be able to I was also the first year to pay £9,000 for uni, so it just seems as if my particular year group just, miss out all the time.
I was the first one, the last of the O-levels, and that's not good because then they made sure you got a lower grade so the other ones look good. But I still did really well, actually, as it goes. Lee Harris, what do you think?
Look, the 2 points I want to make about this, you can't trust anything that Keir Starmer says for a start. Flip-flop Starmer, you just don't know what the man's going to do. You have no idea what he's going to do. His 5 pledges that he won the leadership on, the tax raid that's going to happen soon, saying that, you know, we're going to raise these taxes on working people, yet we know he's going to raise taxes. The point about Keir Starmer and will he take us back into the EU is, this is the man that stood up and said, I will respect the result, whatever happens. I saw the clip, he said it in Parliament, I will respect the result. As soon as he lost that vote, he went straight out and campaigned for another one, right? So the guy is... I don't trust him. I think he's a bit of a liar.
But you could say that about Rishi Sunak.
I would say that about Rishi Sunak.
And he didn't manage those either.
Yeah, no, Rishi Sunak's, in my view, slightly worse because he... I feel like he lied directly to the membership, of which I was a part of at the time.
What did he lie about, sorry?
Rishi Sunak in general.
What you said just now that you were annoyed about that.
Well, I think he represents the lies that we were told about the Conservative Party reducing immigration. And I know he was only in charge for 18 months, But he was in charge and he did little or nothing to... And with the whole the flights to Rwanda, why didn't he send the flights?
Well, I think he was... Well, I think...
He could have done. France did.
Maybe if he'd listened to Robert Jenrick or Sorella Brentman and made it a bit more watertight.
And spent way more money.
Well, listen, we've got to move on. 22 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome on board. If you just tuned in, what do you think? gbnews.com/your say. But coming up, should civil servants be working from home? Now, I think they want to do it every single day. Union bosses are demanding that Labour must let them and scrap arbitrary targets which force staff to be in the office a set number of days a week. So Keir Starmer is under pressure from union chiefs to scrap the Tory government's push to get civil servants back into the office for most of the week. So what do you think? Should civil servants be working from home? That's next.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A new report suggests that Prince Harry is lonely in California and he's considering returning to Britain despite a seismic falling out with his father and his brother.
But the question we're asking this morning is whether Meghan would come with her Prince Charming or whether Harry would perhaps be more welcome here if he came solo.
Like Kinsey, we'll go to Kinsey Schofield live now in LA. Kinsey, we've got lots of time to talk about this and speculate this. We've got about 6 minutes or so to talk. But what's behind all of this? Where are these thoughts coming from?
They're coming from royal author Hugo Vickers, and I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Vickers, but he's written over 30 books about the British royal family. And he told The Sun that Prince Harry will ultimately return to the UK with his tail between his legs. He described the Duke of Sussex as angry and says Harry is genuinely petrified of losing his wife, Meghan Markle. When asked his predictions for where Harry and Meghan will be in the next 20 years, Vickers told The Sun, I think he'll come home, explaining, I think Harry will come home, and if he comes home, we must be very nice to him because he won't particularly want to. He's quite angry, suggesting that he would be coming home solo. Vickers also said that Prince Harry looks slightly petrified of Meghan Markle and that King Charles has left the door wide open for Harry's return if and when he does decide to come back.
I can only imagine the culture shock that Prince Harry has faced arriving there. This is a kid that has grown up in castles.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
26 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome. This is The Clash. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. This is GB News. Right. Now, should civil servants be working from home? Union bosses are demanding that Labour must let them and scrap arbitrary targets which force staff to be in the office for a set number of days a week. So Keir Starmer is under pressure from union chiefs to scrap the Tory government's push to get civil servants into the office for most of it. So I'm discussing, what do you think? Should they be working from home? Should that be set in stone by the civil servants? Lee Harris.
Oh, this winds me up so much, this story. I just couldn't believe when I found it. They're only asking for 2 days a week in the office. Right, they already get flexible.
So who's asking? Just to
the government or the civil service bosses, they're asking for 2 days a week in the office. They already have flexible time. That's it. right? That I just cannot believe that they are saying, no, we want to stay working from home, and they just want them back for 2 days out of 5. I just think it's utterly ridiculous.
So the bosses want the civil servants to do at least 2 days, and it's the unions who are saying that they want them to do
the unions. The only people, in my view, that should make that decision are the people that understand the productivity of the civil service, right? Unions don't understand any of that. Right? It's absolutely bizarre that they even have a say in this, to be brutally honest. It's down to the management and the productivity of those departments, and as it happens, the productivity is rubbish.
Yeah. Well, do you not think that should have... do you not think there should be some level of measure with productivity as to how many days you stay in the office? Because at least you can be monitored there.
Well, I think you can be monitored anyway. We live in, we're in 2024. I think that, a lot of employers are able to monitor you remotely, and I think that the best measure of productivity is kind of the results that you actually can provide.
Great.
I actually saw conflicting evidence that said that the productivity was actually higher when people were able to work from home and have a higher flexible...
At the beginning it was, but people got somewhat lethargic and got used to it and started enjoying it.
But then what is the problem? I mean, I work from home a lot of the time. I'm not sure if you work from home 24/7, so it's very rich. I think a lot of people would say, these civil servants, while working from home 5 days a week, for some reason, in this country, I just find it wild that when a group of people are working in the public sector, it's almost as if they're like slaves to us just because it comes from, tax. We should dictate whether they work from home or not. It's the same across the board. But it's like...
So have you noticed the civil service, the Home Office backlog? These are civil servants. They're asking to work from home. And also there's some documents that they may have which may compromise the security of things if you're working from home.
Look, I think that there's a case for it, maybe depending on the department. There might be some departments that can't work from home at all. I think if you're working with any sensitive information, realistically, you won't be able to work from home, whether it's 2 days or not, right? If you're handling stuff like that. But I think for the majority, considering how large the civil service is, realistically, I think more than half of the civil service could probably work from home. And we also have to recognise that these public sector kind of institutions have to be competitive. And at the end of the day, the private sector are offering working from home.
No, but they're competitive with results, ultimately. And if they're not
competitive with staff.
If they're not achieving the results...
Recruitment and retention.
If they're not achieving the results, they should not be... and should not be lauding it. And the unions, who are they to be telling...
Exactly. And there's two types of... there's two questions about this. Sorry, this question has two elements to it. So you've got the first bit, which I actually agree with you on, right, is that flexible work... I've absolutely no problem with flexible working, and it depends on the industry that you are in, whether that works or not. So... a couple of my clients, I run my own business, a couple of my clients, I speak to lots of people, probably the same as you.
Yeah.
Now, half the people that I speak to say it's actually worked really well. Since COVID, flexible working has worked really well. People are at home and that's fine and it's worked well for them. Exactly the same company, in exactly the same industry, said it was awful. My team weren't delivering as much as they were previously. It didn't work at all. It's completely individual. It should be down to the boss of that area of the business. Then you've got to sort of transpose that over to the civil service. And in my view, and maybe I'm being a little bit unfair, I just think they're all blooming lazy. I think Jacob Rees-Mogg, wasn't he, was going around leaving notes on their desks saying, can you just please come back to work? Like, don't be so weak. Order them back in.
Where are you getting
not think, and he did actually, Jacob Rees-Mogg did, but do you not think, though, Joanna, that it's a bit overreach for the unions to be demanding this? Because ultimately it should be the employer or whoever's behind the productivity for the organisation, rather than a union coming in and saying all civil servants or a lot of them should just be allowed to work at home. Carte blanche, that's it.
Well, that's the union's job at the end of the day, to represent, and the actual employees of the civil service will be able to see what their productivity has been and what their performance has been. And it's just a two-sided argument. Like I was saying, it may differ from department to department, which is why I think that if this rule comes in, it probably shouldn't be just kind of a blanket view of every single civil servant. But I would say the majority of them probably do not need to work from home. And I'll go back to the point that I was saying before, that you have to be competitive. We have to get the best people. And we have a recruitment and retention problem in the public sector and within the civil service.
Why are they asking them to come back in?
No, but if private sector are offering them that, then...
If everything was rosy and it was all going brilliantly, why are they asking them to come back in? It's only 2 days. It's
principle.
2 days.
2 days a week. 2 days a week. You can have the rest of it. 3 days you can work from home. 2 days a week. Surely there should be some give and take. Or you think with the union bosses demanding they should be able to do that every day of the week?
I mean, you know, if it was me, if it was me, I would compromise if I was in their position. But at the same time, if the union bosses feel as if there's enough of a case for it, then there's enough of a case for it.
It also depends, just one last point, it also depends on their contract, right? So if you are employed with flexible working, great. If you're employed not to have flexible working, I'm sorry, but that's your employment. And for the unions to step in and say, oh, you know, that's it, we've got it, you know, we want flexible working. You weren't employed on that contract, so...
Well, what do you think? GBNews.com/your say at home. Do you think the civil servants should be allowed to simply work fully from home and that the unions are the ones who should be dictating this? Stay tuned, but still to come, do you believe Labour were unaware of the £20 billion black hole? First, get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. 3:32. I'm Ray Addison. Our top stories. 2 men in their 20s have died after a 2-seater light aeroplane crashed in a field in Thorganby, near Selby. North Yorkshire Police received an emergency call just before 10 this morning. It's thought the victims are the pilot and his passenger. Tommy Robinson's supporters say he's been arrested under anti-terror laws. It follows a rally in central London, which attracted thousands of people yesterday. A complaint was later made after a film was allegedly shown to the crowd in breach of a High Court order. Posting on social media, his supporters said he's being held by police using powers afforded to them under the Terrorism Act. Manchester's mayor is urging people not to rush to judgment following Thursday's incident at the airport there. Andy Burnham's comments follow the publication of new video obtained by Manchester Evening News, which appears to show a violent altercation in the lead-up to a suspect being kicked by a police officer. The constable involved is under criminal investigation for assault now. Mr Burnham says it's a complicated situation with 2 sides to it. Priti Patel has become the 5th MP to enter the Tory leadership race. The former Home Secretary says she can unite the party, turn it back into a winning machine. She joins James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat and Mel Stride running to replace their ex-boss, Rishi Sunak. Nominations close tomorrow. And Labour is set to overhaul planning rules to build 1.5 million homes in 5 years. Writing in The Observer, Angela Rayner said delivering social and affordable houses at scale is her #1 priority. This week, the Deputy PM and Housing Secretary will outline a focus on grey belt land, building on disused car parks and wasteland. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, lots of you have been getting in touch with your viewers. gbnews.com/your say. I will read some of those out. But next, do you believe that Labour were unaware of the £20 billion black hole?
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It stays mostly settled the next couple of days, particularly hot across the southeast of the UK thanks to an area of high pressure. It generally stays close to the southeast, but this weather front will move in across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland to give some patchy rain later in the forecast. But for the rest of Sunday, plenty of warm sunshine ahead of dusk across much of the UK. Overnight, we'll see thickening cloud across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland. 1 or 2 patches of light rain, but most places staying dry overnight. Clearer skies for England and Wales. A few fog patches forming towards dawn, and temperatures, well, for towns and cities staying up in double figures. A little fresher in the countryside, but it means a beautiful start for most on Monday morning. Though there is a weather front just moving into the Western Isles to give some patchy rain here. Across the rest of Scotland, a bright start, some hazy sunshine. Similar for Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures starting around 14 or 15 Celsius. So quite a warm start to the day. Northern England into Wales, plenty of sunny spells. The rest of England as well. Here, temperatures approaching 20 Celsius in the London area at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then through the day on Monday, plenty of sunshine across England and Wales. Just perhaps an afternoon shower developing across the high ground of Northern England, southern Scotland. And this weak weather front just stays to the northwest of Scotland, so perhaps further rain through the day across the Western Isles, making its way towards the Highlands by the end of the day. And temperatures widely getting into the 20s, the mid to high 20s across central southern parts of England, close to 30 Celsius for London. So a fine end to the day on Monday across much of England and Wales. This week weather front does push its way southeastwards across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then generally the outlook is fine and settled, but the increasing risk of thunderstorms Wednesday into Thursday, turning fresher too.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark Meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
38 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome back. If you've just tuned in, though, where have you been? We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. This is The Clash. Now, do you believe that the Labour Party were unaware, or those in government, Labour, unaware of the £20 billion black hole? Chancellor Rachel Reeves is to use an audit of public spending to make claims of a black hole facing the Treasury. Now, she is to give a statement to Parliament tomorrow, showing that she says is honesty about the scale of the challenge faced by the Labour government. I translate that to, oh, it's much worse than we thought it was, so we're going to raise those taxes. But what do you think? Do you believe Labour were unaware of the £20 billion black hole? Joanna Jarju.
I don't think that they were completely unaware, and I don't think they're going to pretend that they were completely unaware. So obviously this 20 billion is something that the OBR had kind of warned anyway, like, leading up to the election. But I do think that there's going to be other things now that they are in government and have full access to the books that are going to be shockers that we should know about. So, for example, even recently, Yvette Cooper in the House of Commons was talking about how the government already had spent 700 million on the Rwanda policy, and they didn't disclose that to any of us, didn't disclose that to Parliament, and also there were plans for it to be 10 billion that they were going to spend on this amazing Rwanda plan that everybody loves so much over a course of 5 years. So I think there are going to be certain things that are surprises, and you know, everybody kind of criticises and says, oh, you know, it's going to be doomsday. She's going to say it's so much worse than it was. Now we're going to raise all the taxes.
Well,
but no, because I think that there are certain things that they've ruled out. So they've ruled out, obviously, no tax rises on income tax and VAT, and I think that maybe if they do raise taxes, it with things like capital gains tax or maybe inheritance tax, which realistically aren't big-ticket items and aren't going to affect the majority of working people in this country.
OK, Lee Harris.
They lie, Nana. Of course they knew. That, I will agree with. I will agree a little bit with what you just said, though, because there will be smaller amounts of cash that won't necessarily be shared with the OBR, but the rest of it is literally mirrored with the OBR. So they knew exactly, give or take, like 95%. They knew exactly what they were getting into. But what bothers me about this is this whole, she's going to, Rachel Reeves is going to stand up and say there's a 20 billion black hole and it's really, really bad. We didn't understand. Yet she's going to let Ed Miliband give 11 billion quid to overseas climate aid. What's all that about? Excuse me.
It'd be interesting to find out what that is.
Well, there's a reason for that.
Well, what do you think, in your view, is the reason she's giving 11 billion climate aid?
Well, the facts that obviously, you know, as a leading country globally, we do have a responsibility. That's number one, whether you agree with it or not.
Shows their priority.
But then also, there is actually such a thing as climate migration as well. So obviously, we see a lot of people and we see them as economic migrants. But realistically, in the next couple of years, 5 to 10 years, you'll see an increase as well of people coming from even certain parts of Africa, migrating up to the countries in the Mediterranean, and then inevitably coming here if they're coming from speaking countries.
Is there actually any real
English-speaking countries.
I mean, like, I've never heard anyone say, I'm coming from wherever it is because of the floods or because of that. Most people want to stay where they are. So I'm not sure there's actual real evidence of that. I know there's a suggestion that that's how it will be.
Yeah.
But right now, most of the people coming from these places are economic migrants looking for a better life irrespective of
the difference is they're looking long-term. That's not to say that that's kind of like the key problem at the moment in terms of when we actually look at people who are more so coming from war-torn countries, or they're actually just categorically illegal migrants that are coming just for an economic reason. But what I'm saying is that it's a trickle-down effect, and we always forget that we're the last stop for these migrants. So as much as we think that we're being kind of flooded with migrants, realistically, let's say if somebody was migrating for climate reasons because there was a drought or something like that in Africa, they would stop at the next country closest to them.
Exactly.
Then they would go to Europe. So you're the last step.
You've debunked what you just said then, though. So they're not really climate migrants coming here at all, because, like you said, they'll stop off at the nearest place, the next place.
But that happens with anything, whether it's climate or not. But all I'm saying is that it's not as extensive, but it's bound to get worse if you believe in climate change. That is, other people will say rubbish straight away if you don't believe in just the basics of climate change anyway. But if you believe in it and you're looking long term, then obviously you want to make sure that these countries are working a lot more sustainably to
Nick
counteract
has sent
that.
the message in saying climate migration is not our problem. Send them to China. He said.
It is about priorities, and don't get me wrong, I don't disagree with what you just said. I just think that why is that our problem at the moment, and why are we kind of making it a big deal right now when Rachel Reeves is going to stand up and tell us about how bad things are and stuff, but she's still going to let Ed Miliband do this. Net zero, I think the estimations for that are between 2 and 3 trillion quid. I just think all of this nonsense that they come out with about having not enough money to do this, if you cancelled net zero right now, you'd save 20-30 billion without even breaking a sweat.
Well, Ed Miliband has said that bills will rise and net zero savings will take time. So all this net zero stuff, in the meantime, we are spending a lot of money. I'm just reading this one from... Oh, it was quite funny and I missed it. This one is to you, specifically, Joanna Georgiou, because... No, Damien says... Explain why climate change only makes migrants out of young men and not the elderly, children or women, because he's basically...
Was it, Damien, did you listen to anything that I just specifically said? I'm not saying that the problem that we're having right now with migrants is specifically because of climate change. An apology, and with respect, Damien, but that's not what I said. I'm talking about in the long term, and I even, kind of scoped out specific things that people will do. It would come majority from war-torn countries, or there will be categorically, illegal migrants. But the problem that we've got in this country is that we don't do enough long-term planning, and everybody wants to see A equals B, and we want to see the results from whatever, and then afterwards we end up in a really bad situation.
I agree with you that we don't do enough long-term planning, because there's a lot of vested interest in government because they are thinking of their own term. Very briefly, Greg, this is what he says. He says 20 billion black hole. Of course they knew this is or was always going to be the excuse to do things they said that they would never do. And I think, I'm with you on that. Right, coming up, my niggle, today we'll be on the slave play, the blackout nights after actor Kit Harington defended it and says it doesn't discriminate against white people. But that's exactly what it does. Next, though, is Prince Harry being selfish?
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Most people will be familiar with French artists such as Auguste Renoir, Claude Monet and Camille Pissarro, who, with others, made up the Impressionist movement of the late 19th century. But we are probably less familiar with the British contingent of the Impressionists, artists like Frank Bramley, Elizabeth Armstrong Forbes and Walter Langley, amongst many others. David Messam is on a mission to change that. I'm joined by David Messam and by Patrick Duffy, an esteemed archivist. These people we're talking about, are they really Impressionists? I mean, I assume they're British, but are they Impressionists?
I think we had the same query when we wrote a book about the whole thing in '85, actually. And we were the book nearly went out as The Garden of Bright Images, actually, though my author then, Laura Wortley, was quite insistent that it should be called The Garden of Bright Images, but I thought it'd probably be put in the gardening section, actually. So, the question you ask is what is on other people's minds, too, actually. Have we got Impressionism in this country? I think for me, as I used to do quite a lot of shopping, if you like, in America, looking for English pictures out there, and they've got American impressions, and I'm quite happy with it. But the English are different.
Were they friends and colleagues? Were they collaborators with the French Impressionists?
Broadly speaking, British Impressionism is, as we term it, is the post-Impressionist movement. So they were certainly inspired by the French Impressionist movement as it was, but they came later. They travelled around Europe and became attuned to en plein air painting, so painting outdoors, and that's what they brought over with them. We call it British realism. But there's a focus.
British realism, I kind of recognise.
Yeah,
I mean, that's exactly what that looks like.
The People's Channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, first though, actor Kit Harington. Now you may remember him from, what is that thing he's in? Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Now he defended slave play. He's in it actually, having dedicated performances for black-only audiences. Now this was an initiative which discriminates against white people. What it basically does is say that a black-only or black-identifying audience for one night or 2 nights, in this case, there are 12 weeks of the performance. So most of them are anyone can come. And they're also saying that white people are welcome, but it's meant for people who are identifying or black identifying, and they call this a blackout night. So it will run for 12 weeks. So let's see what my clashers think of that. Lee Harris and Joanna Jarju. Lee Harris, what do you think?
I hate everything like this. I hate anything that divides people by the colour of their skin. And maybe some people are saying I'm a bit overreacting a little bit, but I think this is the kind of thing where it starts. I think just drawing attention to people's skin colour just over the, going to watch something at the cinema or theatre, I think is absolutely crazy. I think it's divisive, wrong. And I saw that Kit Harington sort of made this ludicrous point that I did notice that the majority of the people in the audience were white. Well, yeah, you're in the UK. The majority of people in the country are white. It's like, what do you expect it to be, like 50-50 the entire time or something? This whole thing just makes my skin crawl. I wish we could just stop talking and divide about skin colour and dividing people by their race.
The play is about race and all the sort of woke things. So race, sexuality, and what's the other one that's uber woke? Can't think of it right now. It aids me, but I'm sure Joanna will know. Yes, well done.
Here to be at service.
Joanna Jarju, do you not think this is a bit like saying, well, all black people will think this, so that's why they're best placed to come and see this thing, which is not true at all?
So I actually don't like this, and I think that some of the justifications that have been made in the past have been that it's almost, for some black people, they want to have certain nights where they're almost like in a safe space to kind of, experience the play and stuff. And I actually think that it does the opposite, because if it's a play that it's about, really important topics and stuff about race, then surely you would want a more diverse audience so that you can educate those people more, rather than telling them to move away from a play that you're supposed to be so powerful and about really important. So I think any kind of white person who's making the effort to actually go and see this play is probably the right type of person that you want there in the beginning. And I just think that sometimes with things like this, I can understand, and empathise why people, I don't know, I personally would not have a problem with this. But, people are comfortable with what they're comfortable with. I just feel as if it's just a touch too far, really.
Well, and to say that if you're black, you're in a safe space with black people, let me be honest, I'm probably more likely to be killed by a black person than a white person, just by looking at the statistics of a lot of, if you go to the knife crime stats and things like that. So I don't know, you know, and obviously these people aren't going to kill each other.
Nana, that's what are you talking about? You'd be more likely to be than a black person. Have you not seen the knife crime rates in Glasgow before? I don't think knife crime is not exclusively a black thing.
No, I'm just, in general, I'm looking at a generalisation. I mean, that's very general and very vague. It depends where you are. But, I mean, you know, to say that you're in a safe space just because the people are the same colour as you, I think is an absurd presumption. And then to assume that people have a similar mindset to you just because they're the same colour as you is another absurd presumption, simply because black people are made up of Africans, you have West Indians, you have different parts of Africa, which are different countries where people have completely different narratives, completely different traditions. Just because our skins are a similar colour does not mean that we have a similar view of the world or that we've experienced a similar level of racism or not. It's irrelevant, actually.
I completely agree. And it also feels like we're being babied. Like someone says to you know, you've got to do this because society needs that to happen. It needs for you to have these sort of black-only nights or whatever they call it, blackout, are they? Is that what it is?
Can you imagine if it was a whiteout?
Exactly.
It would not be allowed.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
The point is, these people are the very people who'd be like, how absurd, how could you? It's
ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. We think it's ridiculous, and I'm glad we all agree on that one. Right, now, Prince Harry. Is he being selfish? I ask this as fierce agreeing that King Charles may never reunite with his two youngest grandchildren, or even, perhaps, even Meghan and her dad as well, and her kids. So Prince Harry refuses to bring his young family to the UK due to security fears. So I wonder what Meghan's excuse is for not taking her kids to see her dad. Anyway, do you think Prince Harry is being selfish? I'll start with you, Lee Harris.
Yes, I do, and it does feel a little bit like he is doing this to make a point. You know, and he's emotionally blackmailing King Charles by saying, look, I want to get the security for when I come over to the UK for my wife and me because we feel like we're going to be attacked or whatever. Fine. And he's been told he can't have that. And he's kind of going, all right, then, well, if I can't have that, you can't see your grandkids.
Do you think... I mean, he would argue again, like you said, it's his security and he's worried about his fears.
It's exactly what he's doing.
It is agree with that at all.
So crazy, the fact that you've got Prince Andrew, who is still mollycoddled and basically, you know, wrapped in cotton wool still and gets security in all of this.
But he hasn't been
then
accused
you've
of
got...
anything. Prince Andrew, sorry, hasn't been... You know, he's not been found guilty of anything.
I'm not even talking about the accusations. I'm just talking about, literally, in principle, the fact that he's no longer a working royal and he still basically lives off the spoils of everything, you know, that you would benefit from if you were a working royal. And I think that, you know, Prince Charles, I can't fathom why, if your kids are going to come and see you... King Charles, sorry. If your kids and grandkids are going to come and see you, why you wouldn't just give them security?
Well, why wouldn't you just take your kids to see your grandparents? That's what I'd say. What do you think? Still to come, the Great British Debate. Stay tuned, more on the way. Next.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It stays mostly settled the next couple of days, particularly hot across the southeast of the UK thanks to an area of high pressure. It generally stays close to the southeast, but this weather front will move in across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland to give some patchy rain later in the forecast. But for the rest of Sunday, plenty of warm sunshine ahead of dusk across much of the UK. Overnight, we'll see thickening cloud across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland. 1 or 2 patches of light rain, but most places staying dry overnight. Clearer skies for England and Wales. A few fog patches forming towards dawn. And temperatures, well, for towns and cities staying up in double figures. A little fresher in the countryside, but it means a beautiful start for most on Monday morning. Though there is a weather front just moving into the Western Isles to give some patchy rain here. Across the rest of Scotland, a bright start, some hazy sunshine. Similar for Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures starting around 14 or 15 Celsius. So quite a warm start to the day. Northern England into Wales, plenty of sunny spells. The rest of England as well. Here, temperatures approaching 20 Celsius in the London area at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then through the day on Monday, plenty of sunshine across England and Wales. Just perhaps an afternoon shower developing across the high ground of Northern England, southern Scotland. And this weak weather front just stays to the northwest of Scotland, so perhaps further rain through the day across the Western Isles, making its way towards the Highlands by the end of the day. And temperatures widely getting into the 20s, the mid to high 20s across central southern parts of England, close to 30 Celsius for London. So a fine end to the day on Monday across much of England and Wales. This week weather front does push its way southeastwards across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then generally the outlook is fine and settled, but the increasing risk of thunderstorms Wednesday into Thursday, turning fresher too.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could become the next big Great British Giveaway winner, with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
On the day that I got the money in the bank account, everything just seemed a lot sunnier.
But I do have something to spend it on.
Just go for it. It's an absolute must.
Thank you, GBNews.
Amazing feeling to win.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 4 o'clock. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Coming up for Nana's Niggle, which today will be on the slave play, the Blackout Nights, after actor Kit Harington defended it and said it doesn't discriminate against white people. That's exactly what it does. Then, for my outside guest this week, I'm joined by a tireless campaigner and the founder of Parents Lives Matter, Jay Pitzell, whose son, Balram, died at the age of 30. Jay believes his son would still be here if his parents had been able to get a second opinion. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Coming up to 1 minute past 4, our top stories. 2 men in their 20s have died after a 2-seater light airplane crashed in a field in Thorganby near Selby. North Yorkshire Police received an emergency call just before 10 o'clock this morning. It's thought the victims are the pilot and his passenger. Their next of kin have been informed and an investigation is underway. Tommy Robinson's supporters say he's been arrested under anti-terror laws. It follows a rally in central London which attracted thousands of people yesterday. A complaint was later made after a film was allegedly shown to the crowd in breach of a High Court order. Posting on social media, his supporters said he's being held by police using powers afforded to them under the Terrorism Act. Manchester's mayor is urging people not to rush to judgment following Thursday's incident at the airport there. Andy Burnham's comments follow the publication of new video obtained by Manchester Evening News, which appears to show a violent altercation in the lead-up to a suspect being kicked by a police officer. The constable involved is now under criminal investigation for assault. Mr Burnham says it's a complicated situation with two sides. Former Met Detective Peter Blexley agrees.
There's a number of people that look really daft this morning who were very quick to rush to judgment with absolutely appalling language being pointed in the direction of certain police officers. And this incident now, which I again reiterate, we still have not seen all of, is going to test, of course, our police, the Independent Office of Police Conduct, the Crown Prosecution Service, the Greater Manchester Police, and I would say, where's the Home Secretary? Where's the Prime Minister?
Priti Patel has become the 5th MP to enter the Tory leadership race. Former Home Secretary says she can unite the party and turn it back into a winning machine. She joins James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat and Mel Stride running to replace Rishi Sunak. Nominations close tomorrow. Former Deputy Chair of the party, Brendan Clark-Smith, told us Ms Patel will be popular with members.
Is a good lineup there, but I think if you look at Priti Patel and particularly a relationship with party members as well, they felt very unloved, some of them fairly demoralised after the election campaign. They need somebody who can pick them up again, someone with a bit of vision, someone who's a real blue-blooded Conservative. And I think Priti Patel, she actually fits that description pretty well, I'd say.
Well, not everyone agrees. These voters in Lichfield have a very different view.
I don't think I like the lady too much. No. And her views and things.
I'm sure she's a very pleasant individual and I wouldn't want her as a leader if my life depended on it. She's just not a very good politician. Yeah. And it's not what we need now.
What for you does the Tory party need?
David Cameron back.
I think she can be quite aggressive in a manner. I don't like some of the things that she's suggested.
With a useless Home Secretary, she's going to be a useless leader for the Conservative Party. I refuse to vote for her.
Water bosses who repeatedly allow sewage to be dumped illegally will face criminal charges under new government plans. Environment Secretary Steve Reed is warning they'll also be stripped of their bonuses as part of tougher regulations. Customers will also receive refunds if money earmarked for sewage system investment is not spent on that purpose.
If water bosses keep pumping these levels of raw sewage into our waterways, they'll face criminal charges. We'll give the regulator the power they need to ban the payment of the multi-million-pound bonuses they've been awarding themselves despite overseeing this kind of catastrophic failure. And we're going to ring-fence customers' money that is earmarked for investment in improving the sewage infrastructure so that if it's not spent on that, it gets refunded back to customers in discounts off their bills.
And finally, the Foreign Secretary is condemning a rocket strike in the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights, which killed 12 people, including children. David Lammy said, "We are deeply concerned about the risk of further escalation and destabilisation." Israel released this footage of air attacks being carried out against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon overnight. The country has vowed to inflict a heavy price after a rocket struck a football pitch in the village of Majd al-Shams, the deadliest attack on Israeli territory since the start of the conflict. Right, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in around half an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. Remember slave play? Despite my disgust and the disgust of others of this new trend for blackout events, which are basically events which clearly discriminate against white people, this play has gone ahead with its intention of having 2 nights which are for black only or black identifying audiences. It will run for 12 weeks. Now, you would think that having been excluded from things in the past, that people who've experienced this would think better of excluding others. But oh no. Actor Kit Harington, star from Game of Thrones, has defended the new play, dedicating 2 nights of this for this divisive blackout claptrap, which is what I like to call it. I mean, even Rishi Sunak, who was the Prime Minister at the time when it was announced, described it as wrong and divisive. After the first blackout performance of the slave play earlier this month, Kit Harington told Laura Kungsberg, "I've come to realise or believe that it's an incredibly positive thing. Number one, if you are white, no one is stopping you from buying a ticket. It's not illegal to buy a ticket for that show if you want to come," he said. "It's saying we would prefer the audience to be this." Well, there's no point saying that all are welcome then, is there? Because if it's for black people or for black identifying audiences, then some people are being excluded. And this is just an attempt to defend the indefensible. He then went on to say, number two, "I've been going to the theatre since I was young with my mum, and I've only ever really known predominantly white audiences. It is still a particularly white space. So to have the argument that, oh, this is discriminating against white people is, I think, vaguely strange and ridiculous." The absolute nerve. The slave play explores all the woke DEI narratives, race, identity and sexuality, and was a success on Broadway, although it hasn't won any awards despite being nominated for 12 Tonys. Earlier in the year, Jeremy O. Harris, who wrote the play, justified his blackout nights as someone who wants and yearns for black and brown people to be in the theatre, who comes from a working class environment and so wants people who do not make six figures a year to feel like theatre is a place for them. It is a necessity to radically invite them. It's ridiculous. These are the very same people who would be up in arms if the shoe were on the other foot. They would be the first to show their outrage. These people are oblivious to their own intolerance. It's really simple. It is totally wrong to exclude people on the grounds of race or colour, and I'm surprised that Sadiq Khan or someone who has any form of clout has not stepped in to stop this, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you trust Labour with Britain's finances? Chancellor Rachel Reeves appears to be laying out the groundwork for tax rises, but will happily award public sector workers with an inflation-busting pay rise. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you trust Labour with Britain's finances? Then at 4:50, it's Worldview. We'll cross live to Los Angeles to speak to Paul Duddridge, host of the Politics People podcast, to get the latest on the US presidential election. Stay tuned, though, at 5 for my outside guest. Now, I'll be joined by the founder of Patient Lives Matter, Jay Patel, whose son Balram died at the age of 30. Now, Jay believes that his son would still be alive if his parents had been able to get a second opinion. All of that is on the way. That is coming up in the next hour. Get in touch, post your comments, your views at gbviews.com/yoursay or gbnews.com/yoursay. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Love that, Danny Kelly. I'll start with you, Danny Kelly. What do you think?
Well, it is claptrap, and it's demonstrably wrong. I mean, one lad, the actor is saying that It's predominantly a white space. What he's saying is that white people are putting black people off from going to the theatre. That's what he's inferring that, OK? He's setting back race relations. You know, we're supposed to be a country where people integrate. Yeah, here we are, this guy dividing us. And then on one hand, he says, you're not welcome, but you can come. I mean, what sort of invitation is that to a white person? You're not welcome, but you can still buy a ticket if you like. Oh. And the other lad, the black guy, the guy who wrote it, is basically saying that it's work... Yeah, so what he now says is that working class black people don't have anything of any interest for them in the theatre unless it's a play about slavery. It's just so condescending. If he wants working class people of any colour to go to the theatre, why don't you start reducing the ticket prices? Why don't you start creating theatrical plays and productions that are of interest to poorer people rather than the very wealthy who go to the West End at £90 a ticket and then have a £100 meal in Chinatown? If you want to make it more of interest to working class people, just write something that's more of interest to working class people. Black people will still come along. My black pals find things of interest that I find of interest. It's not because I'm white that I find certain things interesting and they find certain things interesting. It's all garbage.
What do you think, Christine?
I think it's Danny says it's incredibly condescending to think that black people only want to go and see a black play. I mean, the percentage of the UK population that is black is about 4%. So you're hardly going to fill a West End theatre if you've only got 4% of the population to start with. Many of those aren't within reaching distance of London. Many of those are excluded because I don't know how anybody affords to go to the theatre, frankly, and how anybody takes kids to a West End show. I have no idea because it's so expensive. So I think it's ridiculous. And, oh, yes, as Danny says, whites are very welcome, but we'd rather you didn't come. Imagine if the boot was on the other foot and somebody just said, this is for whites only, please. No, black people can come, but we'd rather you didn't. I mean, it's unimaginable. Or if they said, oh, this is for men only, women can come, but we'd rather you didn't. Any other group that you did that to, as it were, discriminated against positively, you'd be in deep trouble. So why is it different? As I say, we're talking about 4% of the population.
It's interesting
because it's
interesting because I don't think, I mean, using the word positive discrimination is actually an insult because it's not positive at all. It is the most negative form by doing that, by excluding people.
It's positive in one sense.
It's positively ridiculous, actually. Yes. But you exclude people based on the fact that, or tell them that they're not welcome. Like if somebody's coming to my house, I say, well, you know, I'm only having so-and-so around. You can come if you like, but obviously I don't really want you to be there because it's only supposed to be. I mean, who's going to go to that? And also, I think sometimes these people are totally ignorant to their own intolerance, because why would they think that that is acceptable, even to put that out there? That
because they want to shove it down our throats, that's why. They want to say, you are... Anybody who disagrees, you are intolerant, you don't understand, you're prejudiced, etc., etc. That's what they're trying to say, which is completely wrong. I would have thought the vast majority of people think this is ludicrous. It is positive... I don't know whether you call it positive or negative discrimination.
It's not positive. The result isn't positive, is it?
It's not positive in that sense of the word, but it is also positive in this... Anyway.
No, I don't think it's positive. I don't think there's such a thing as positive discrimination. I think somebody's just made that up to make discrimination sound acceptable. So you can discriminate when it comes to things. So you might say, oh, I need this, this and this, so you're discriminating, or a group for this or a group for that, that's fine. But when it's something that is open to all, where you're trying to get a message across, like theatre, I think it is absurd that you then decide that you're going to exclude certain people.
What would be interesting, and this station is pioneering, it's revolutionising investigative journalism again. They've got a fantastic team of reporters here who are investigative journalists. What they should do next time, because this is becoming a theme now with these blackout nights, someone from the station should mic themselves up and see if they are welcome. Buy a couple of tickets and walk in and just hear what people are saying and see if they're as welcome as that lad thinks we should be as welcome.
But even...
Nana, I nominate you.
Oh, well, I think they'll see me coming.
But as a white guy,
I'm probably the wrong kind of black person to go there.
I'm teasing.
Yeah, so like a 6'4" bald white guy who probably fits a stereotype of something that you know, representing something unpleasant. No, but it's true. You know, I think I'm probably right-wing lunatic and all of that sort of stuff. Someone like me should go and buy a ticket, be mic'd up, have a hidden camera, and see how really welcome I am.
Well, you should go there, have a little England
flag. Great idea.
Have a little England flag.
You're too well known, Danny.
But it's an idea, because this guy guy doesn't want me there. It doesn't matter what he says. He doesn't want me there.
I do think, though, that this is really, literally, as you said at the beginning, taking race relations backwards.
Yeah.
And I also know that these kind of people who are setting this up would be horrified if things were the other way around. They wouldn't accept it, and they'd be the first to complain, which is the point I was making on my monologue. It is totally wrong, and I don't think I need a... If someone wants to balance that view and tell me, if you're listening at home, gbnews.com/you'll say, if you think it's a good idea, please let me know so I can have some balance. I mean, he would argue, as he said, to keep people free from the white gaze, or that it's a...
What does that mean?
Again, it's deeply offensive.
And women are supposed to be kept away from... This is the argument for smothering women and things so you can only see their eyes. Keep them away from the male gaze. Well, come on, you've got to live with it.
Well, I mean, look, some religions would do that, and often women wearing this sort of thing, I presume you're referring to the burqa, are doing it out of choice, and that's fine. You know, what people want to wear and what they want to do is up to them. But when it comes to excluding people, I think specifically because of the colour of someone's skin, that is the exact description of racism. Or to then say, oh, it's limiting because you can come but you shouldn't, so I don't know.
It distills down very simply into white privilege, and it's impossible to be racist against a white guy. That's in its purest distillation.
Well, what do you think? GBNews.com/you'll say, but there's still plenty of time to enjoy a massive win this summer with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash. You really could be our next big winner. Here's how.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Right, well, this is GB News live on TV, online and on digital radio. Lots of you been getting in touch. Worried for GB Stone. Says, Danny, sadly you're judged as far as a right-wing for having no hair these days. You look like them. Are you tattooed too?
No.
Oh, yes,
I haven't got a tattoo. I haven't got any ink on my body.
Oh, go on, Danny.
I promise you.
Up.
When I was a youngster,
I
wanted to get an Everton thing on my leg, and I'm so grateful I didn't.
I'm teasing you. He hasn't got tattoos. Not that I've seen.
I haven't.
Listen, Trudy says, I've been deactivated for agreeing with the black-only, which is marvellous. I didn't make any sense, Trudy. Unfortunately, I did try. I thought you were saying something that... yeah, Richard said he probably made it black only to get publicity. Yeah, I would say that is. But imagine being prepared to do that and then damaging race relations in that way. I mean, I'm sure he would argue that. Right, but if you just tuned in, welcome. Coming up to 19 minutes after 4 o'clock, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, Worldview. We'll cross live to the United States to get the latest there. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you trust Labour with Britain's finances? There's a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Do you trust Labour with Britain's finances?
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Tom, dying to talk to you about this. Transport for London, right? They run the buses and tubes and things in London, and they've got £2.5 million. £2.5 million, which they're going to spend on what?
Diversity training. I dare say they've probably got plenty of it already. But
let me tell you something. I sit on a board of a company, and
I was diversity trained recently.
really?
Yes.
Really?
And I must admit,
What was that like?
Well, I think it was like stating the bleeding obvious, right? So you sit there and you say, well, why would I do that? Or why would I treat someone like that? I wouldn't do that in the first place. I don't need to be trained in this. And you just sat there for 6 hours while people told you the obvious. But what do you think of spending that amount of money for Transport for London?
It's crazy, because on the one hand, do we need this diversity training? The TfL is an incredibly diverse workforce already. The idea that there are barriers to entry there doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Also, as you say, these things are commonsensical, really. And to the point, sometimes they can become problematic, because they're not just saying, you know, be open and tolerant of people and so on. It's actually preaching a more kind of divisive sort of rhetoric to people, which can be a big problem in the
get your
workplace.
diversity training from your boss or somebody, don't you? Somebody pulls you up and says, you don't talk to people like that. This is how you talk to them. That's it. Done.
It should be that
spend
simple.
6 hours in front of...
And I know that in the grand scheme of things, £2.5 million is kind of money down the back of the sofa. But at the same time, my local tube station just closes early on random nights of the week because of the fact that they haven't got enough staff.
4 years ago, there were 655 people at City Hall earning over £100,000 a year. People might argue that's 655 too many. There are 1,100 now. In 4 years later.
1,100.
Actually, 1,142 to be precise.
The People's Channel. Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. 22 minutes after 4 o'clock. Lots of you have been getting in touch with the slave play. Robert says, Nana is correct. This play thing is discriminatory. How can the theatre get away with it? Nothing stops any shade of colour going to the theatre. It's a matter of choice. The same thing, read the countryside. We don't see many people of colour in the countryside, but nothing is stopping them from coming here. Perhaps they would rather stay in town, as we have poor internet, no food outlets and so on and so forth. In fact, we have nothing but fields and footpaths with the odd expensive pub. So maybe, you know, exactly. Right, and also this country is, I think, 96%, 92% white, so you're going to, you know, obviously black people about 4%. But anyway, anywho, well, you're with me. We've got loads still to come. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you trust Labour with Britain's finances? The new Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, appears to be laying the groundwork for tax rises in the not-too-distant future after reports emerged that she is considering handing more powers to HMRC in a crackdown on savers, investors and freelancers. This comes as she anticipated to unveil a £20 billion black hole in Britain's finances tomorrow. Tax rises, despite Labour promising that they would not raise the big three if they win power. So what do you think for the Great British Debate this hour? I'm asking, do you trust them with Britain's finances? Well, joining me to debate this, political commentator Lee Harris, Joanna Jarju, and also former editor of the Labour list, Peter Edwards. Peter Edwards, I will start with you. Do you trust Labour?
Of course, yeah, but Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves will be aware that trust has to be earned and that public faith in politics is very low. But from everything we've heard today, it looks like Rachel Reeves is going to point out a couple of things. First of all, the in-year position, i.e. the fiscal year, which is roughly the tax year, is worse than had been appreciated prior to the election. And then secondly, that some of the Tory commitments are unfunded, i.e. they'd pledged to build roads, for example, or rail tunnels in certain parts of the country, but hadn't earmarked pots of money to pay for them.
But like on prisons, though, they haven't spent the money. So they had some things where they've spent lots of money on, some things they haven't spent money on, and the Labour Party unravelled the fact that
the
there was money
in crisis.
Well, no, but I appreciate that. But I'm just alluding to your point that there are some things that the Labour Party actually ended up with more money for. So it swings and roundabouts. Lee Harris.
I can't trust Labour with much at all at the moment because the amount of lying that they've done already to get into office. I think we knew that this was coming. I think a lot of people predicted that there was going to be a black hole in the finances and taxes were going to have to go up. But Labour, still really wouldn't admit that that was the case. And of course, as I mentioned before, we've got 11 billion quid worth of money going to climate aid overseas, and at the same time they claim they haven't got enough money to do other things. I just think that so far they have not been straight with the public, and I do expect that to continue.
Are any of them ever straight? Joanne Jarju?
Well, I think I completely disagree with Lee. I think they have been quite straight with the public, and some of the things that they've been really straight about are things that they've been criticised for. The initial 28 billion, for example, that they were going to invest, kind of rolling back on that before the election and being straight with people that actually we expect that the economy is going to be in a much more dire position than we'd expected. So I think they've been completely transparent, and I think that what we can see from Labour's economic plans are more of a long-term vision, and it's something that I really respect, actually investing in infrastructure, investing in things like green energy. And I think they've probably taken tips from Bidenomics, and it's worked in that sense. And they're also reaching out to the private sector as well, again, with this understanding that the public purse isn't as big as what we would like it to be.
But Peter Edwards, there's a lot of things that they're cracking down on. Do you actually believe that they are not going to raise the three taxes that they said they wouldn't, so national insurance, income tax and VAT?
Yeah, I firmly believe they'll hold on to their commitments, and when I was a reporter years ago in 2010, the Lib Dems were absolutely burnt by breaking their pledge on tuition fees. Politicians can change some of their views as the economic position of the country and GDP evolves, but you can't go back on a core pledge like that, and I don't believe they will. I'm certain they'll stick to it.
But do you believe, Peter, that they didn't know about the £20 billion black hole? Because they're kind of alluding to that.
Well, look, I worked for a shadow chief secretary in opposition, so that's a deputy to the chancellor or shadow chancellor, and it's just a fact that you get less information when you're in opposition, and you get more detailed information both on in-year spending, i.e. in the current fiscal year, and on future projections when you're in government. So, of course, you get more information once you win an election, and, of course, you have to make adjustments accordingly. By the way, on the politics of it, David Cameron and George Osborne spent 2 years trashing the Labour Party every day after being elected in 2010.
OK, Lee Harris, what do you think? Surely a lot of the information was available. We did talk about this earlier, that it was available through the OBR. They would have known that there's a black hole and that they have to find a way to fund it. So do you believe that they actually won't raise those three main taxes?
I think there is a chance they will stick to that commitment because of exactly what Peter just said, that the fact that they have made a very big public promise on that, and they're very easy for the opposition to attack them if they don't. But we still have this massive kind of... I think it's even the IFS have said that the numbers are just not adding up. They're going to have to raise taxes. And what I think a lot of the public are nervous about is that we just don't know where those taxes are going to be raised and how they're going to do it. And it was just... And especially with Keir Starmer not being particularly... what's the word I'm looking for? He doesn't seem to follow through on everything that he says he's going to do. It's just impossible to tell what they're going to do in the future. We have no idea.
John, did you take Lee's point that actually Keir Starmer did perform many U-turns? I think it was 28 in total. And even the 28 billion that you suggested in terms of the green policies, he scrapped that. And then put it into the long grass when he realised it would destabilise the markets. Surely they could have worked that out before they laid that out.
Well, some of the things I would disagree that Keir Starmer has completely scrapped. I think that what they've done is actually pivoted, which is what I would want from a government. They've delayed some of these plans and said that maybe we can't spend the full 28 billion to begin with. And I think that that's important for them to just be straight with, the British public. So, I think that, one of the different things that they could potentially do as well is delay some of these plans. I know that initially when we hear that there's this 20 billion black hole in the economy, that we're all going to think that initially they're just going to raise taxes, but actually they could go with another strategy and just delay some of these spending plans and have them kind of trickle in as time goes on, rather than just the full initial investment that they'd initially wanted to have.
But what about the VAT on private schools? That is turning out to be a bit of a damn squib, really, isn't it? A lot of people taking their kids out of the schools. And also it turns out that actually if the schools wait to do any essential works, then they can claim the VAT back. So they're not going to get the money back. Do you think that, Joanna, listening to some of that maybe they should consider U-turning on that one?
No, I don't think so. I think they should stick to their principles. And, you know, one of the things...
But if it doesn't work, if the principle...
Well, it's not even started yet. You've got to give Labour a chance. The policy hasn't even kicked in.
I haven't even finished speaking. So if the principle that you set out is already beginning to fail in terms of the amount of income, 1.6 billion they're planning to get, then you would think that a Labour government may look at that, Peter.
Sorry, I think you want to go. Do you want to cut across Joanna?
No, Peter, I'm in charge.
OK. There's no way at all you can say reintroducing or introducing VAT on private schools has failed. The policy has not yet begun. I think the earliest it might come in is 25, 26, but we'll have to wait and see.
So assume you're pro-Rwanda then?
I think the Rwanda policy was a wicked policy, and I'm delighted.
But it didn't even start. It didn't even start. That's the point I'm making. So you're making the same point.
It's also been revealed that the government had intended to spend 10 billion over the course of 5 years on Rwanda and had already spent 700 million that they didn't actually disclose to us. So to kind of say that, you know, we should just kind of go with that plan when now it's actually been revealed what was going on.
Lee Harris, please finish what you were saying.
Just honestly, this version of Rwanda was rubbish. That's not the point I was making. The point I was making is that Peter is saying that you can't judge that policy until it's happened. Yet I'm pretty sure Peter would have said that Rwanda was bad. Yet we didn't even send anyone to Rwanda. It hadn't even started yet. So I'm sure you were pro Rwanda.
I'm definitely not, and I've already told. And I know you're grinning.
Well, that's my point.
You're grinning and laughing when I'm virulently against Rwanda policy.
I've snookered you, Peter.
No, you haven't, and don't interrupt. Have you been to Rwanda?
No.
OK, so I've been to Rwanda, and I know that Rwanda is not set up for a scheme like this.
When did you go to Rwanda?
It was about 10 or 11 years ago.
So you don't trust the
11 years ago. I mean, that's quite a long time ago. Things do change.
Can we also just acknowledge the 700 million and the amount of people that have actually been sent to Rwanda? I think that's the key thing that we should focus on when we're talking about actual efficiency of where our money is being spent. I think that's the key thing to actually focus on here, not to let it run and run and run to 10 billion.
Agree with that. I actually don't agree with that in terms of...
You want to spend 10 billion, Nana, on Rwanda?
Well, if I could just finish that, I'd let you know, yeah. I actually think that what you're alluding to is this small edge of something that is a lot bigger, because if you continue as you are in terms of the way we are doing with migration, then actually that amount of money will be chicken feed next to what we're going to be having to shell out if the population continues to rise in the way it is. So anything that works as a deterrent or anything that gives us a chance to put people somewhere else whilst we're processing them, or to send them where they couldn't because they can't be sent back to where they've come from, or we don't know where they've come from, then I think that's a good thing. And I actually suspect that a lot of other countries will be ripping Rwanda's hand off for that opportunity. But that's my view. What's yours? GBNews.com/. You'll say we're actually talking about... what are we talking about?
Public finances.
Public finances. Yeah. Do you trust the Labour Party? Yes or no from each of you. Lee Harris, do you trust the Labour Party? With
no.
OK. Joanna Jarju, do you trust them with our finances?
Absolutely.
And Peter Edwards?
Of course, but you have to earn that trust every single day.
So is that a yes or no?
Oh, yeah,
not all the time?
I trust them. Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your thoughts. Get in touch. GBNews.com/. You'll say with yours. What do you think? Do you trust them? Still to come, my monologue. We'll be talking about a very distressing case that's on the way. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. 4:33. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Our top stories. 2 men in their 20s have died after a 2-seater light aeroplane crashed in a field in Thorganby, near Selby, North Yorkshire. Police receiving an emergency call just before 10 o'clock this morning. It's thought the victims are the pilot and his passenger. Well, protesters have gathered outside of Downing Street demonstrating against the reported arrest of Tommy Robinson. Robinson's supporters say he's been arrested under anti-terror laws. A complaint was made after a film was allegedly shown at a rally in central London in breach of a High Court order. Manchester's mayor is urging people not to rush to judgment following Thursday's incident at the airport there. Andy Burnham's comments follow the publication of new video obtained by Manchester Evening News, which appears to show a violent altercation in the lead-up to a suspect being kicked by a police officer. The constable involved is now under criminal investigation for assault. Priti Patel has become the 5th MP to enter the Tory leadership race. The former Home Secretary says she can turn the party back into a winning machine. She joins James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat and Mel Stride, running to replace their ex-boss, Rishi Sunak. Nominations close tomorrow. Labour is set to overhaul planning rules to build 1.5 million homes in 5 years. Writing in The Observer, Angela Rayner said delivering social and affordable houses at scale is her #1 priority. This week, the Deputy PM and Housing Secretary will outline a focus on grey belt land, building on disused car parks and wasteland. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in around half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's just coming up to 36 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. Coming up, it's Worldview time. We'll cross live to the United States to get the latest on what's happening there. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you trust Labour with Britain's finances? There's a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Do you trust Labour with Britain's finances? Cast your vote now.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It stays mostly settled the next couple of days, particularly hot across the southeast of the UK thanks to an area of high pressure. It generally stays close to the southeast, but this weather front will move in across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland to give some patchy rain later in the forecast. But for the rest of Sunday, plenty of warm sunshine ahead of dusk across much of the UK. Overnight, we'll see thickening cloud across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland. 1 or 2 patches of light rain, but most places staying dry overnight. Clearer skies for England and Wales. A few fog patches forming towards dawn, and temperatures, well, for towns and cities staying up in double figures. A little fresher in the countryside, but it means a beautiful start for most on Monday morning. Though there is a weather front just moving into the Western Isles to give some patchy rain here. Across the rest of Scotland, a bright start, some hazy sunshine. Similar for Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures starting around 14 or 15 Celsius. So quite a warm start to the day. Northern England into Wales, plenty of sunny spells. The rest of England as well. Here, temperatures approaching 20 Celsius in the London area at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then through the day on Monday, plenty of sunshine across England and Wales. Just perhaps an afternoon shower developing across the high ground of northern England, southern Scotland. And this week, weather front just stays to the northwest of Scotland, so perhaps further rain through the day across the Western Isles, making its way towards the Highlands by the end of the day. And temperatures widely getting into the 20s, the mid to high 20s across central southern parts of England, close to 30 Celsius for London. So a fine end to the day on Monday across much of England and Wales. This week, weather front does push its way southeastwards across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then generally the outlook is fine and settled, but the increasing risk of thunderstorms Wednesday into Thursday, turning fresher too.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. 39 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time to return to the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you trust Labour with Britain's finances, as Chancellor Rachel Reeves appears to be laying the groundwork for tax rises in the not-too-distant future, after reports emerged that she is considering handing more powers to HMRC in a crackdown on savers, investors and freelancers. Really? Not more IR35, please. Meanwhile, the government is expected to approve a 5.5% pay rise for nurses and teachers to stave off further strike action, in spite of the fact that they only budgeted for a 3% pay rise. So, do you trust them? That's what I'm asking for the Great British Debate this hour. Let's see what my panel make of that. Christine Hamilton and also Danny Kelly. Christine Hamilton.
Well, we've got to hope we can trust them, certainly for the next 5 years, haven't we? They're the masters now. I find it astonishing that Rachel Reeves is astonished about this black hole. Everybody else knew it was there. The OBR knew it was there. It's not exactly a revelation that this great black hole is there. She knew it was there. So this sudden revelation about, oh, my goodness, I thought everything in the garden was going to be rosy, is a bit ridiculous. I don't think they will renege on their three main things about income tax, etc., etc. I mean, that would be such a blatant go against their manifesto, so I don't think they can possibly do that. But, I mean, why Rishi Sunak went for an election when he did, when things are improving. I mean, the unemployment rate is down and inflation is down, etc., etc. And the OBR has a reasonably optimistic forecast for this country, whereas normally they've been gloomy ever since Brexit. Ever since Brexit, the country's been gone to the dogs. We've got one of the strongest growth rates in leading countries. So things are going very well for them, and they haven't exactly inherited this appalling legacy. No Labour government has ever left office with taxes lower than when they arrived. So they always put up taxes. So taxes will go up. So heaven help you if you've got a bit of saving or you want to sell your house or anything like that. And if they tax companies, who will end up paying it? The people who buy their products. So it'll always get passed on. They say they're not going to tax the workers, but these taxes will get passed on to workers if they tax companies out of existence.
Danny Kelly.
One of what you read out makes me feel uncomfortable. It's about if you've earned assets throughout your life, you've worked really hard, you've saved, you've done the right things, and then all of a sudden they come in and take some of it. It always makes me very, very tearful.
You haven't earned them because you haven't grafted at the coalface.
I don't get, view. You know, the means testing of so many things, particularly when you get older. You know, you can be in a nursing home and you can be in your 90s and they're taking money out of your house and you're sitting next to someone who's getting it all from the council taxpayer and the national taxpayer. And it looks like they're going to start operating a little bit like that with certain things. So that makes me feel uncomfortable. The question is, do I trust Labour with the finances of the country? And at the moment, I do. I've seen nothing yet that would suggest that I can't trust them. But listening to Christine a moment ago, and as I was driving in, you were commenting on it as well. You know, did they really not know about this £20 billion?
Everyone else
this
knew.
black hole? If that's sleight of hand, then that worries me, because all along they've been saying they're not going to raise the taxes unless there's a reason to raise the taxes. Now, all of a sudden, this £20 billion comes along.
I know. I mean, it does seem a bit absurd, doesn't it? I mean, everyone kind of knew about this. I'm sure that there was comments about it as well, but suddenly Rachel Reeves, oh, my God, there's a huge £20 billion black hole. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Had she forgotten lockdown and furlough and all that? And Labour were urging the government to go even further on all that, so they would have put us even further into the red. I mean, they, as far as I can see, they're on a slight wing and a prayer, and they're going to hope that interest rates go down, and then the interest on the national debt, which is whatever it is, 100 billion or something, will go down and make it a little bit more manageable. I mean, we spend more on interest on the national debt, or nearly as much, as we do on the health.
But let's be honest, though, to be fair, and just to, you know, the Tory party got us here where we are now, and they cannot be held, you know, they can't run away from that.
Oh, gosh.
They've been in power they were in power for many years, so, you know, whilst Labour do have to handle what's in front of them, the Tory party did create a large portion of this, but this shows nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our Great British Voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Let's go to Kidderminster, home of the carpets. Let's have a chat with John Reid. John Reid, he's a real Labour man, aren't you, John Reid?
Yeah, I am, and happy Summer's Day to you, Nana. You look summery, and I hope I do as well, so that's a good start. Do I trust Britain's finances to Labour? I absolutely do, but then I'm a bit of a trusty old person, you know. I trust people. When I go into prison, nobody hurts me because I trust them and they trust me. But look at what the Tories did over the last 14 years. I trusted them all this time to run it properly. And what did they do with the health service? What did they do with education? What did they do with the criminal justice system? There are so many things that we trusted them on. And let's not think too hard about COVID, because we trusted them there, didn't we? We thought we were all doing the right thing when Boris was saying stay indoors and all the rest of it, and he was having the parties. So I think it's a mistake to trust them too much. I'm more with Danny on this, and to be honest, and not being nasty to Christine, but I don't believe a word of what she said.
You don't believe a word of what Christine said?
Well, thanks.
That's not very nice. I believe what you're saying. You said you're a very trusty person. Trust her. She's telling you what she thinks. Honestly. Thank you very much, John Reid. Really good to talk to you.
As well.
Thank you.
Facts.
That's John Reid. He's having a laugh there in Kidderminster.
He doesn't like facts.
Well, he's telling you he doesn't trust what you're saying. He doesn't believe a word you said. That's what he said. He's a very trusting person, Christine. Fair enough. 45 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News Live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up in the next hour, my Great British Debate. I'm asking, are Labour under the thumb of the unions? But next, Worldview, we'll go live to Los Angeles to speak to Paul Duddridge, host of the Politics People podcast, to find out what's happening in the United States.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm joined now by Stefan Kyriasis to give us the latest on everything theatre.
So, yeah, we're going in first with Starlight Express, which is back. It's not in the West End. It's out at Wembley at the Troubadour Theatre, which is a big, almost kind of warehouse space, which suits because, as you know, have you seen the show?
Starlight Express was my first ever musical. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. I only saw it once, but I remember it being magical.
Well, this one, it's 1984 it started, and it's still running in Bochum in Germany in a huge arena. So basically what we've got, they've slightly tweaked it, and there's a little boy or little girl, depending on the cast, going to bed, obsessed with toy trains and dreaming of trains. Everybody is dressed up. To me, it looks like a cross between Tron and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I don't really think any of them look remotely like a train, but hey, the songs are Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's pop mixed with kind of cod 1950s rock and roll, some power ballads. The lyrics are politely like something out of an old speak and spell machine or something, you know. He's a steam train, they're out of date, he's being bullied by the diesel and the electric, and he falls for this carriage, the first-class carriage, new girl Pearl, and he wants to impress her, so he enters a race, and that's pretty much it. And when the races happen, all these barriers come up around where we're sitting, the lights are flashing, the music's thumping. It's utterly ridiculous, and I felt like a kind of teenager that was huffing sherbet dib-dabs off a giant block of sugar. It's so much fun, and the really crucial thing about it all is that somehow, in the middle of all of that, I just felt myself getting into the story. And when Pearl and Rusty have their little duet, I was very moved, and there's this big starlight sequence, which is the inspiration, the magical starlight that he's seeking. It's beautiful.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And I've just been reading some of your comments because we were talking about the black-only night. That is, there's 2 performances for the slave play. I love this from Carol. Carol Harris, she says, do you think Gary Lineker will be going to the theatre on the black-only night? I love that. That's hilarious. Well done, Carol. That's brilliant. Keep them coming. gbnews.com/your say. But it's now time for Worldview. And let's travel over to America to speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Duddridge. Let's find out what's happening stateside. There's so much going on. We've got Trump versus Harris. They're neck and neck in the polls, apparently. Is there any truth to that, Paul?
There is. No, they are. She's come out of the traps, and she is pretty much neck and neck. I think, I'm always really cautious with you and saying, like, I actually didn't think Trump was going to win. I think the DNC have picked the one candidate that Trump can beat and will beat. And yes, neck and neck. Not leading in all the polls, by the way. Trump is still leading in enough of the polls. He still has the majority of the polls on his side. But in some of them, she's neck and neck. And in others, she's like 1 point ahead. But overall, the momentum is still with Donald Trump. So we were seeing sort of footage online yesterday of like, this great groundswell of support suddenly for Kamala. And there's these supporters in Florida coming out. And then you look at the overspill of supporters for Trump's last rally yesterday in Minnesota. The number of people that couldn't get into his rally is about 10 times the amount that she actually had at her rallies. And so, or at her support campaign events. And so I think that she's peaked, is what I'm going to say. I actually think Trump now is... I'm not seeing enough momentum coming out for her, other than online, other than financial, and again, it's not going to turn into votes necessarily on the day. So we're in a very interesting position. Like I said, when I left you last Sunday, when we still had Joe Biden as the candidate or the probable candidate, it's like I actually think that was a harder one to beat. I think the DNC have called this wrong, which I think explains why Obama took so long to endorse her, because I think Biden, see, look at that letter. Am I going to get really nerdy quickly? The resignation letter from Biden didn't mention Kamala. And I think that was the party saying, look, we will invoke the 25th Amendment unless you sign this letter. So they signed the letter. Then he tweeted that he supported Kamala. And I think that was a big kind of protest, if you like, to the Democrats. Kind of like, you should have let me carry on. So he's lumbered them with Kamala. And Obama took a long time to endorse because, the rumor is she's the one candidate that Obama thinks that Trump can beat. So I think I'm very optimistic all of a sudden about Trump's chances. It is not the bounce that you'd be expecting from somebody who's supposed to come in and save the party and save democracy, apparently.
Well, I mean, I'm reading on the Washington Post that J.D. Vance is giving Republicans buyer's remorse. So the question is this the case? And is Trump really thinking about replacing him as his running mate?
Yeah, there's a very strong rumour that J.D. Vance, he's only been the VP pick for 2 weeks, is going to be replaced. Listen, I think that's 50-50. Like I always say, that it doesn't really matter who Trump has a running mate. You don't suddenly vote for Trump because he's got J.D. Vance or because he gets rid of J.D. Vance. But if J.D. Vance continues to be polling so negatively and actually distracting the campaign from Trump, yeah, I think that he might be replaced by Vivek. I think that would be probably the next choice of running mate. There's just the J.D. Vance is really interesting because it's not difficult to pull quotes from J.D. Vance, public quotes, where he has just vilified Trump over the years. Now that could either play as like, look, hey, I'm a convert, or it can play that your enemy is going, you compared him to Hitler. They literally compared Trump to Hitler. So I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't rule it out. Trump is a one-off, and I don't think it would hurt his campaign one bit if he replaced J.D. Vance.
Now, what about Trump holding a summit with Netanyahu?
It's brilliant, isn't it? So Mar-a-Lago, he gets Netanyahu down and to have a one-on-one summit. Now, this is another world leader that is directly communicating with Donald Trump. There's a thing called the Logan Act here, where private citizens cannot undermine the strategy of the government when they're talking to another government that the country is in dispute with. So some people are trying to get Trump now prosecuted under this, the Logan Act. It only counts if you're at war with somebody and you try and privately negotiate. But Trump is now meeting world leaders at Mar-a-Lago as if he is the president in waiting. And I think that the optics were very, very positive for him, because when Netanyahu left Kamala, what's ringing in his ears is she's basically giving him a dressing down and telling him to end this war, etc., whereas Trump is being effusively supportive of him. So I think, again, this looks like Trump on the world stage again. I genuinely, and I'm not just saying this, I am very partisan, as you know, but I really do think that they have misfired this with Kamala. I think she's going to peak and be misjudged. I will say there is a scenario.
Very briefly, because we're running out of time.
I think.
Yeah.
Very quickly. Kamala could still be president if Trump wins and Biden steps down in, say, November, December. She could be president.
All right, lovely. Paul Dudridge, thank you very much. Check out the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It stays mostly settled the next couple of days, particularly hot across the southeast of the UK thanks to an area of high pressure. It generally stays close to the southeast, but this weather front will move in across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland to give some patchy rain later in the forecast. But for the rest of Sunday, plenty of warm sunshine ahead of dusk across much of the UK. Overnight, we'll see thickening cloud across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland. 1 or 2 patches of light rain, but most places staying dry overnight. Clearer skies for England and Wales. A few fog patches forming towards dawn. And temperatures, well, for towns and cities staying up in double figures. A little fresher in the countryside, but it means a beautiful start for most on Monday morning. Though there is a weather front just moving into the Western Isles to give some patchy rain here. Across the rest of Scotland, a bright start, some hazy sunshine. Similar for Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures starting around 14 or 15 Celsius. So quite a warm start to the day. Northern England into Wales, plenty of sunny spells. The rest of England as well. Here, temperatures approaching 20 Celsius in the London area at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then through the day on Monday, plenty of sunshine across England and Wales. Just perhaps an afternoon shower developing across the high ground of Northern England, southern Scotland. And this weak weather front just stays to the northwest of Scotland, so perhaps further rain through the day across the Western Isles, making its way towards the Highlands by the end of the day. And temperatures widely getting into the 20s, the mid to high 20s across central southern parts of England, close to 30 Celsius for London. So a fine end to the day on Monday across much of England and Wales. This weak weather front does push its way southeastwards across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then generally the outlook is fine and settled, but the increasing risk of thunderstorms Wednesday into Thursday, turning fresher too.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on a chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Coming up, my outside guest this week, I'll be joined by tireless campaigner and founder of Patient Lives Matter, Jay Patel, whose son Baldram died at the age of 30. Jay believes his son would still be alive if his parents had been able to get a second opinion. And then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are Labour under the thumb of the unions? But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good evening, 5 o'clock. I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Our top stories. Protesters have gathered outside of Downing Street, demonstrating against the reported arrest of Tommy Robinson. His supporters say he was arrested under anti-terror laws. It comes after a complaint was made after a film was allegedly showed at a rally in central London yesterday in breach of a High Court order. 2 men in their 20s have died after a 2-seater light aeroplane crashed in a field in Thorganby, near Selby. North Yorkshire Police received an emergency call just before 10 o'clock this morning. It's thought the victims are the pilot and his passenger. Their next of kin have been informed and an investigation is now underway. Manchester's mayor is urging people not to rush to judgment following Thursday's incident at the airport there. Andy Burnham's comments follow the publication of new video obtained by Manchester Evening News, which appears to show a violent altercation in the lead-up to a suspect being kicked by a police officer. That constable is now under criminal investigation for assault. Mr Burnham says it's a complicated situation with 2 sides to it. Former Met Detective Peter Blexley agrees.
There's a number of people that look really daft this morning who were very quick to rush to judgment with absolutely appalling language being pointed in the direction of certain police officers. And this incident now, which I again reiterate, we still have not seen all of, is going to test, of course, our police, the Independent Office of Police Conduct, the Crown Prosecution Service, the Greater Manchester Police, and I would say, where's the Home Secretary? Where's the Prime Minister?
Priti Patel has become the 5th MP to enter the Tory leadership race. The former Home Secretary says she can unite the party, turn it back into a winning machine. She joins James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat and Mel Stride running to replace Rishi Sunak. Nominations close tomorrow. Former Deputy Chair of the party, Brendan Clark-Smith, told us Ms Patel will be popular with members.
Is a good lineup there, but I think if you look at Priti Patel and particularly a relationship with party members as well, they felt very unloved, some of them fairly demoralised after the election campaign. They need somebody who can pick them up again, someone with a bit of vision, someone who's a real blue-blooded Conservative. And I think Priti Patel, she actually fits that description pretty well, I'd say.
Well, not everyone we spoke to is a fan. We spoke to these people in Lichfield. They've got a very, very different view.
I don't think I like the lady too much. No. And her views and things.
I'm sure she's a very pleasant individual and I wouldn't want her as a leader if my life depended on it.
She's just not a very good politician. Yeah. And it's not what we need now.
What for you does the Tory party need?
David Cameron back.
I think she can be quite aggressive in a manner.
I don't like some of the things that she's suggested.
She was a useless Home Secretary. She's going to be a useless leader for the Conservative Party. I refuse to vote for her.
Foreign Secretary is condemning a rocket strike in the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights, which killed 12 people, including children. David Lammy said, "We're deeply concerned about the risk of further escalation and destabilisation." Israel's released this footage of air attacks being carried out against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon overnight. The country has vowed to inflict a heavy price after a rocket struck a football pitch in the village of Majd al-Shams, the deadliest attack on Israeli territory since the start of the conflict. Water bosses who repeatedly allow sewage to be dumped illegally will face criminal charges under the new government plans. Environment Secretary Steve Reed warned that they will also be stripped of their bonuses as part of tougher regulations. He says customers will receive refunds if money earmarked for sewage system investment is not spent on that purpose.
If water bosses keep pumping these levels of raw sewage into our waterways, they'll face criminal charges. We'll give the regulator the power they need to ban the payment of the multi-million-pound bonuses they've been awarding themselves despite overseeing this kind of catastrophic failure. And we're going to ring-fence customers' money that is earmarked for investment in improving the sewage infrastructure so that if it's not spent on that, it gets refunded back to customers in discounts off their bills.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in around half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon. This is coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Now, every Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next. Today, I'm speaking to the founder of Patient Lives That Matter, Jay Patel. Now, he'll be joining me to discuss Jay's son, Balram, who died at the age of 30. Now, Jay believes that his son would still be alive if they had been able to get a second opinion from another doctor. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are Labour under the thumb of the unions? As ever, tell me your thoughts, post your comments at gbnews.com/your say. 7 minutes after 5 o'clock, and it's time for Outside. As ever, we always talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next. And this week, my guest is Jay Patel. Now, he's the founder of Patient Lives Matter. His son, Balram Patel, tragically died in 2023, aged just 30, while suffering from several life-threatening conditions. A coroner's investigation has since been opened into Balram's premature death, and Jay believes his son would still be alive if they had been able to get a second opinion from another doctor. Well, I'm joined now by Jay Patel. Jay, thank you very much for joining me.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So talk to me about Balram. I mean, he was born with half a heart.
Yeah, I mean, he was born with half-functional heart, and we really didn't know how long we had with him. But he was happiness personified. He was a fighter. Within 6 weeks, he was diagnosed with a second life-threatening condition, at 3 years severe scoliosis. Later on, around 14, he vomited a litre of blood. Very unusual for him. He was diagnosed with a fourth life-threatening condition in 2007. He spent 81 days at Everleigh Children's Hospital. His fifth life-threatening condition called plastic bronchitis, which is very similar to cystic fibrosis. And then sadly, 2 weeks before he passed away, stage 4 liver cancer, BCLC, stage D. But he fought. He was a walking miracle.
So he was able to walk and move?
Oh, yeah, he walked with oxygen.
Yeah.
I didn't do long distances because of his heart.
Yeah.
He communicated extremely well, very cheeky little devil.
So he could talk and everything else?
He could talk, he could eat, he could communicate. He had limitations of physically what he could do. He was developmentally delayed, so even though he was at the age of 30...
Oh, look.
He was a baby of a mental age of around 8. But, you know, he took everything on his cuff. He rewrote the history books throughout his, I think early on in his life, they wanted to make a syndrome of anybody having this number of non-related conditions. But I said we love Balram as Balram. He also had a dozen other conditions outside his 6 life-threatening conditions. But, I mean, if I go into the story of Balram, which is okay with you, the sad part is that he wasn't allowed to continue his life. You say about second opinion, him still being here now. I don't know if he'd be here now today, but I sure do know that he wouldn't have passed away on the 9th of August the way he did. Basically, what happened around the 14th of July last year, Balram at home, his oxygen levels plummeted. I wasn't there, my wife and my daughter were. They sort of put him on full oxygen, but he wouldn't revive very well. So an ambulance was called, he was taken to Barnet, he became better. They discharged him, took him to Guy's and St Thomas's to have a review, and they discharged him, saying they're quite happy with him. We got a call on the 18th of July from the consultants to say, could we bring him back? Because his infection markers had crept up from what was 125 to 194 inflammation markers.
And was he showing any signs of illness when they called him back?
Well, he still had the conditions that he had. You know, nothing particularly untoward. But, you know, we respect the hospital, and if they say things aren't right, we'll listen to them.
Yeah.
So we took him in, and gradually his inflammation and infection markers started subsiding, but he started going edemic. He started retaining fluid. That's not unusual for Balram because he's got a cardiac condition, but the trouble we had is that none of the oral diuretics would work. They tried a whole combination, but nothing worked. So on the 28th of July, they put him on intravenous diuretics, diuretics pumped directly into the bloodstream. And he started improving quite well. On the 30th of July, they put a note on the ward door to say, as of tomorrow, start wearing masks. So I then questioned this to say if there was COVID on the ward. Eventually, they told me there was. So I questioned the nurses and doctors and said, listen, we're doing everything for Balram other than the IV diuretics. We were giving all his 20-30 medication, his physio, his nebulizers, dealing with his incontinent, everything, and we were happy to do it. So they agreed with us that Balram's interests are best served to be at home, especially because we're quarantining at home as well. The next day, on the 31st July, the consultant removed the IV and put him on what they call subcutaneous diuretics, which are little attachments onto the tissues, and they pump the drugs into the body in that manner. They also gave us the option to find other people to administer this medication. Very bizarre. You wouldn't ask a parent of a very sick child to find ways of administering drugs. But we did. They approached one of them and they didn't approach the other. On the 3rd of August, nothing seemed to be happening. So I then sent them an email and said, unless you discharge Balram with appropriate treatment, we're going to ask for a court order that he be released to come home. On the 3rd of August, the consultant and the adult congestive heart disease nurse and Richard's fellow came to the room and said, actually, it's OK for Balram to be discharged on oral diuretics. And I said, I don't understand. How can he be discharged on oral diuretics when they already failed in hospital a week earlier and they had to go on IV? They said, no, he'll be absolutely fine. And I argued and I argued. I then asked for a second opinion. The first time I asked for a second opinion and said, could I please have another doctor examine Balram, look at the records and explain to me how oral will be fine when they have failed here previously, and I can't see how it would work.
When you were asking for a second opinion, was it because of the way you were being treated, or was it just simply because you wanted another opinion?
Well, I couldn't agree with what they said.
Yeah.
It made no sense. It still doesn't make any sense.
Did you have like a feeling of, you know, sometimes when people are talking, you get a feeling that they're being sort of obstinate and are not allowing you to get past, or was it just an exchange where you just wanted...
Well, I mean, it made no sense. And I was like talking to brick wall. I said, explain to me why we started IV 5 days earlier when oral failed, and now you're telling me oral are going to be OK. And if there's going to be an issue, we'd rather have it in the hospital as opposed to being at home. So they said I couldn't have a second opinion. The consultant that was in the room would be the one that would give the opinion. But they also then said to me, look, take him home. We will cover you. We will protect you. If there's any issues, bring him straight back. Take regular weights, and buy us time. I even went out of the room with my wife and my daughter to ask the adult congenital nurse that, are you sure you're not sending him home to die? And they said, no, we're not. So we took Balram home. And if you could play the video that I sent earlier, this is Balram on the 4th of August at home, happy as Larry, enjoying life.
We should have a video of that. We'll play that.
We'll play that.
There'll be no sound on it, but there he is.
Oh, there he is. So this is Balram at home on the 4th of August.
Oh, he's sitting up. He's fine.
He's happy. He's edema. You can see his legs. They're not that thick. There's not retaining much fluid. I asked him, Balram, what are you doing? He said, I want to be in my lovely home.
Oh.
And, you know, he walked about 100 metres throughout the day on his oxygen, between 3 different periods. He came and had breakfast with us, lunch with us.
Oh.
The 5th of August, sadly, the edema started arriving. The 6th, it got worse. I rang the hospital around midnight and said, my son is struggling.
Oh.
On the 7th, I eventually got through and spoke to one of the adult congenital hurt nurses, and I'm going to play to you the conversation.
Well, actually, we probably shouldn't play the conversation if it's with somebody who's not here to defend themselves.
Oh, OK. Well, then I'll tell you the context of it,
Yeah.
if that's OK. So basically, I said that Balram is very, very unwell. He's retaining fluid. Could we please start the IV diuretics? They said no. I actually said, my son is dying.
Yeah.
We need to start the IV diuretics. They again said no. I said the protocols, we bring him home. If they don't work, we contact you. We've contacted you now. They said continue trialling oral. And I was gobsmacked. I asked once again that the consultant call me. And they said trial further. I said we don't have the privilege of trialling. At 2 o'clock, I get a call from the hospital. Well, they once again say continue trialling oral. This is the second time I asked for second opinion. And I said, I do not agree with this treatment. Can you please act somebody else to look at what's going on? This is despicable, it's outrageous, and my son is dying. They turned around and said, continue with oral and trialling oral. They've actually logged this as well. This has been logged by the chief executive of the NHS Trust in his complaints to say, yes, we did call you at 2 o'clock on the 7th of July, and, on the 7th of August. And we have noted that you asked for second opinion, and we have noted that you disagreed with the treatment. On the 8th, he was a lot worse. We called 3 times. Eventually, we spoke to the adult clinician nurse around 12:30 midday. She said, well, why don't we wait for the palliative care doctor that's coming in about half an hour to see him? I said, look, he has to have IV diuretics. If she agrees to it, fine. If not, he's coming to the hospital. I already started loading the car.
Was he conscious? And were you able to...
He was conscious, but he was struggling. My baby was having difficulty breathing. The palliative care doctor came. She was horrified. She said, how could anybody let a patient get into this state? We suggest you take him to the hospital. So we rushed him to Guy's and St Thomas's. We got there at 5:30 in the afternoon. At 6 o'clock, they gave him a single 40 milligram intravenous diuretic dose. At 6:54, they took an X-ray of his lungs. His lungs were flooded. He was suffocating breathing. And 6 hours later, 6 hours later, they started the IV diuretics. And less than 3 hours later, my baby died. And sadly, it didn't end there. It started another nightmare. In the morning at 9 o'clock, I went to the bereavement office. I told them Balram had passed away, because that's the protocol in the hospital. As we were leaving at 1:30 in the afternoon, I went to the bereavement office and said, do they have a conclusion into the cause of death? And they said, yes, we do. I said, well, that was very quick. They said that he died, number 1A, congestive heart failure, number 1B, congenital heart failure, and number 2, stage 4 liver cancer. I said, but no, he didn't die from that. He died from pulmonary edema. He died from fluid on his lungs. There's no, he didn't. I said, well, yes, he did. I then asked if they have the X-ray taken literally 12 hours before. And they said, what X-ray? So I said, well, I've got it. They said, oh, we'll get it from the notes. Then they came to me and said, they don't have the X-ray. So I said, well, lucky for you, I've got a photo of it. So I presented a photo to her, and her jaw dropped. She then said to me, well, you know, that in itself isn't sufficient. I said, do you have all the records of the phone conversations that we had previous days? She said, there are no records, there are no phone conversations. Yes, they are. I said, would you like to listen to them? She said, no. I said, well, how biased are you? Or how non-biased are you? I said, I've got evidence pertaining to my son's death, what caused his passing, and you don't want to even look at it. Eventually, I convinced her to, and I played the recording, which I appreciate I can't play now. She couldn't believe what was said. She then turned around and said, well, polymedema is not a condition that can be written down. I said, I'm sorry, I don't get it. You know, if you have asthma and you need an asthma pump and you're denied that pump, you can't blame the asthma for taking your life. You can blame the denial of having the pump. Mm-hmm. Next, I get a call from the coroner to say that we're ready to issue the cause of death. I said, OK, what is it? They said, number 1A, congestive heart failure, number 1B, congenital heart failure, and number 2, stage 4 liver cancer.
No mention of the edema?
No, once again, I protested. I said, no, that's not how my son died. They then asked me to write to them, bearing in mind this is literally a day or two after my baby died.
Isn't it?
Well, I couldn't brush my teeth. But I did. I sent them a little letter saying, look, this is the reasons why. This is not a substantive list. Please don't rely on it in that context, but it gives you an idea what's going on. The coroner wrote back to me 2-3 days later and said, right, we've gone to the hospital. We've asked them to change the cause of death to now say number 1A, polymedema.
And did they do it? It was done. So
number 1B, yeah, number 1B, they didn't agree to it, but they changed it.
But you got it done because you kept a log of everything.
Well, I just said it's not right. I mean, I'm sorry, it's not right.
You have to have the correct information. Look,
well, I mean, you tell me where it's wrong.
We're running out of time.
OK.
So you set up Patient Lives Matter.
So basically, very briefly, just thereafter, 2 minutes, if that's what I need. After that, we then went back to the coroner, and 3.5 months later, the hospital wrote a statement of truth as to what happened. The coroner then came back to me and said there's going to be no inquest and no inquiry, and that there was no culpability, and that my son died of natural causes. I then argued with the coroner to say, how can you base it all upon a single witness statement from the other side? I then produced to the coroner over 40 false statements in that witness statement, a statement of truth. And right now, my fight is very much that how can we proceed without the truth?
So you set up Patient Lives Matter?
Yes, I did.
If people want to get in touch or become part of your organisation, do you have a website or something?
Yeah, so basically we have a website called Patients Lives Matter. Yep. You can go on to, if you just type Patients Lives Matter, it will come up. We have a petition on change.org, which is around 44,000 signatures already. I'd like to increase that as much as we can. We also have my email, j@patientslivesmatter.co.uk. People can come on to that. Bolram's anniversary of his death is the 9th of August.
Yeah.
Our plans are on that day to first take him, go to the temple, because he's very religious, our baby, and then go to the houses at Downing Street and hand a petition to the Prime Minister of all these signatures out of respect of the people that have signed it. And also we're trying very, very strongly to help the British public. I love our NHS. Please don't get me wrong, but it needs rectification. It needs our help. It needs to be channeled and tunneled into a way that is far more productive than where it is now.
Listen, Jay, it's been really good to talk to you. I'm really sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
I hope we wish you all the success in your petition. Nobody wants to be here having to do that, but...
I can't bring my baby back.
Yeah, but you can. But you may be able to make a change and help others. And I think this.
But Bolram was an angel, and that's what he left with giving his dad. He said, "Dad, if anybody can sort it out, you can. Go help others, and let's make a change." So that's what I'm here to try and do with the British public on my side, to say we love our NHS, but we need to help her get into the right path. And I think the petition that we're asking for, which is an independent body, regulate the conduct of the NHS and medical institutes. And I think if we can arrange that, that's a start.
All right, Jay, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
Thank you.
As, of course, Jay Patel. Now, of course, the hospital in question are not here to defend themselves, but that is Jay's story. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are Labour under the thumb of the unions? This is GB News.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In World War I, 309 men from Britain and the Commonwealth never came home because they'd been shot at dawn. The majority were killed for desertion, cowardice and sleeping at post. Appearing at their court-martials and told they'd brought shame on their country, these men had no opportunity to defend themselves and were executed by a firing squad. The National Memorial Arboretum launched a fundraising campaign to restore the memorial, which has stood for more than 20 years.
Thank you to your viewers for their support for the fundraising campaign, and thanks to the generosity of so many people, we've been able to replace all 309 of the posts that represent those young men that were shot in the First World War. Restoration of this really precious memorial.
The centrepiece of the memorial is the young soldier, blindfolded and facing his execution. In September 1916, Private Harry Farr was ordered to the front. Already suffering from shell shock, he was overwhelmed and refused his orders. He was court-martialed, and in a trial lasting only 20 minutes, he was sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he faced the firing squad without a blindfold. Janet Booth is Private Farr's granddaughter and was part of the public campaign to have those who were shot at dawn officially pardoned.
When I asked my gran, do you know where I could find Harry's grave? And she looked at my mother, and there was this sort of look between them, and then she said, well, he hasn't got a grave because they didn't warrant, he deserved one because he was shot as a coward and had let his country down. We can come here as a family and pay our respects to him, and also for all the other families, it's somewhere to come and remember their loved ones.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or GBNews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
26 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are Labour under the thumb of the unions? The Labour Party may only have been in power for a matter of weeks, but the trade unions already appear to be throwing their weight around to try and influence government policy. But after all, is that their job, though? Union bosses have wasted no time in challenging on the new government to allow civil servants to continue working from home, and Chancellor Rachel Reeves is set to approve an above-inflation 5.5% pay rise for millions of teachers and NHS staff following threats of fresh strikes. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are Labour under the thumb of the unions? Well, to debate this, joining me, former editor of the Labour list, Peter Edwards, former leader of UKIP, Neil Hamilton, former Labour spokesperson, James Mathewson. And I'm going to start with you, James Mathewson.
Hi, Nana. I think this question is quite an interesting one, and I think it comes from a place with some people of just ignorance and with some people of deliberate ignorance, because for somebody to think that the Labour Party or any political party is under the thumb of the trade unions shows that they don't understand how the Labour Party was created and its purpose. The Labour Party was born out of the trade union movement. The trade unions created the Labour Party, and they have responsibility to answer the trade unions. Now, this isn't some dark and twisted, kind of influence question as it is when it comes to private business or other organisations that lobby political parties, such as the Tories, for example. But when it comes to the trade unions, we should be proud that these organisations that have democratic structures at their heart and represent their members and, of course, fight for wider workers' rights in many industries have a seat at the table in government, because for too long, we've seen them, just ignored in government. We've seen them pushed out of government, and things like the Trade Union Act and the legislation brought in by the Tories since 2010 has seen trade union relations with government get even worse. And of course, when we say trade union relations, what we actually mean is workers' relations with the government, and there has to be that direct line of communication between the two. So I don't think they are. I think it's a very positive thing, and I think it's good to see that balance in government.
All right, Neil Hamilton.
Well, it's all about the money, isn't it? Public sector unions think that Christmas has arrived and that Labour are going to pay on the line for whatever they demand. Of course, whilst they were in opposition, people like Wes Streeting said, why doesn't the Secretary of State sit round a table and talk about the union's demands? Well, they did, but of course they couldn't agree. So what's Labour going to do that's different? There is no money, as we know. And so a 5.5% pay increase on average throughout the public sector simply can't be afforded at the minute. And Rachel Reeves, who's just a sort of backroom Bank of England bureaucrat by training and instinct, isn't going to be in a position to answer the trade unions' hopes. So if she does, then the only way that this can happen is by boosting taxes. And there's very limited scope for that because big tax-raising powers are income tax, national insurance and VAT, and Labour's ruled out increases there. So
OK,
let's
get Peter Edwards in. Peter Edwards.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Neil Hamilton's comments were rather crass. First of all, trade unions are entitled to speak up for their members. Traditionally, it's been a partnership between trade unions, government and business to make the economy work. Also, the attack on Rachel Reeves I found particularly daft. You know, Rachel Reeves was a Bank of England economist, then she worked in the private sector, and I believe she was also an economist at the British Embassy in Washington. So you can agree or disagree with her on policy, but she has a serious and credible CV. And then to go to some of the specifics of it, Wes Streeting, who is now the Health Secretary, said before the election quite clearly that the doctors' union, the BMA, would not get the pay rise of 35% that they'd been asking for. And we had another test, finally, this week of Labour's fiscal rectitude and their desire to put the public finances first. Lots of unions would have said abolish the two-child benefit cap. Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer stuck to their pledges. They kind of turned their face away from popularity and they put fiscal discipline before that.
It was interesting that you mentioned Wes Streeting, sort of in terms of experience, because he had a history degree, so he doesn't really have any experience of actual proper health service, as it were, or medical background. I just thought that was
so you don't have to be a GP to be a health secretary.
No, but we're bringing in Rachel Reeves and then pointing out her credentials because she's the Chancellor, so I just thought it's interesting that you used Wes Streeting in that as well.
I think if I could pop in on that, Nana, just quickly. I think it's important for us to acknowledge that, yes, ideally we want people in government with experience, but that's not the way our system works.
Well, no, I'm not. No. I'm just pointing out that he used Rachel Reeves as an example and then sort of started talking about her credentials and then brought Wes Streeting in. I'm just saying that he, if you're using that kind of thing, he hasn't got any credentials in terms of health. But can I just bring in Neil Hamilton, because there were a few things that Peter said that Neil may want to come back on.
Well, of course, Rachel Reeves was an economist at the Bank of England, and that's the Bank of England that spectacularly failed to fulfil its mandate on inflation and keep it to below 2%. It got up to 11%. It's now back to 2%.
Well, that was years after Rachel Reeves left the Bank of England.
Just let him finish. Let him finish, and then you can come back. Go on. Sorry, carry on, Neil.
Bank of England, Andrew Bailey in particular, has been a spectacular failure and has been responsible for many of the problems that the Labour government now has to cope with. So the idea that Rachel Reeves, because she's been experienced in the Bank of England, has any idea how the real economy works is just ridiculous. I agree that you don't have to be a doctor to run the service, but you do have to have some understanding of real economics, and I don't believe there's anybody in this Labour government, including Wes Streeting, who does. And nobody seriously thought that the doctors were ever going to get 35%. They didn't ever think that themselves. It was just the outlying figure. They were looking for something.
Let's just bring James Matthews in. We've got about 30 seconds. James Matthews, we've got about 30 seconds.
They were looking for 15%.
Sorry, stop, Neil. Neil, can I bring James Matthews in, because we've got about 30 seconds. Sorry.
Neil is moving us expertly away from the point here, and the point is that trade unions represent people, and people work in this country, and people work hard in this country. They deserve to be represented at the table of government. They have been ignored by consecutive Conservatives. People like Neil don't even believe in trade unionism.
You don't know what Neil believes. Hang on, wait. You can't talk for somebody else. You don't know what they believe. No, but he just said it's true. He just said you're wrong. No, he just said you're wrong. All right. So finally, then, so what are your final thoughts on the question? And then, do you believe that Labour is under the thumb of the unions? Peter Edwards, yes or no? Are they under the thumb? Yes or no?
No, and Neil Hamilton demeans himself with personal attacks on the Chancellor.
Well, I think by saying that you're almost doing a personal attack yourself. Neil Hamilton, yes or no?
Well, I'm afraid the truth does sometimes hurt. But no, the answer, Labour is in the pocket of the trade unions.
And finally, James Mathewson.
No, it's not. And it's actually great that we have a government finally who are listening to trade unions and working people as a result.
All right, thank you so much to all of you. Peter Edwards, Neil Hamilton, and also James Matthewson. Really good to talk to you. What are your thoughts? gbnews.com/your say. This is GB News. We'll continue with our great British debate, and I'm asking, are Labour under the thumb of the unions? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Christian Hamilton and Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
5:33, I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Our top stories. Protesters gathered outside of Downing Street demonstrating against the reported arrest of Tommy Robinson have now moved on to Scotland Yard. Robinson's supporters say he's been arrested under anti-terror laws. The complaint was made after a film was allegedly shown at yesterday's London rally in breach of a High Court order. 2 men in their 20s have died after a 2-seater light aeroplane crashed in a field in Thorganby, near Selby. North Yorkshire Police received an emergency call just before 10 o'clock this morning. It's thought the victims are the pilot and his passenger. Manchester's mayor is urging people not to rush to judgment following Thursday's incident at the airport there. Andy Burnham's comments follow the publication of new video obtained by Manchester Evening News, which appears to show a violent altercation in the lead-up to a suspect being kicked by a police officer. The police constable involved is under criminal investigation for assault. Priti Patel has become the 5th MP to enter the Tory leadership race. The former Home Secretary says she can turn it back into a winning machine. She joins James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat and Mel Stride running to replace Rishi Sunak. Nominations close tomorrow. And Labour is set to overhaul planning rules to build 1.5 million homes in 5 years. Writing in The Observer, Angela Rayner said delivering social and affordable houses at scale is her #1 priority. This week, the Deputy PM and Housing Secretary will outline a focus on grey belt land. That means building on disused car parks and wasteland. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in around half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It stays mostly settled the next couple of days, particularly hot across the southeast of the UK thanks to an area of high pressure. It generally stays close to the southeast, but this weather front will move in across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland to give some patchy rain later in the forecast. But for the rest of Sunday, plenty of warm sunshine ahead of dusk across much of the UK. Overnight, we'll see thickening cloud across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland. 1 or 2 patches of light rain, but most places staying dry overnight. Clearer skies for England and Wales. A few fog patches forming towards dawn, and temperatures, well, for towns and cities staying up in double figures. A little fresher in the countryside, but it means a beautiful start for most on Monday morning. Though there is a weather front just moving into the Western Isles to give some patchy rain here. Across the rest of Scotland, a bright start, some hazy sunshine. Similar for Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures starting around 14 or 15 Celsius. So quite a warm start to the day. Northern England into Wales, plenty of sunny spells. The rest of England as well. Here, temperatures approaching 20 Celsius in the London area at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then through the day on Monday, plenty of sunshine across England and Wales. Just perhaps an afternoon shower developing across the high ground of Northern England, southern Scotland. And this week, weather front just stays to the northwest of Scotland, so perhaps further rain through the day across the Western Isles, making its way towards the Highlands by the end of the day. And temperatures widely getting into the 20s, the mid to high 20s across central southern parts of England, close to 30 Celsius for London. So a fine end to the day on Monday across much of England and Wales. This week, weather front does push its way southeastwards across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then generally the outlook is fine and settled, but the increasing risk of thunderstorms Wednesday into Thursday, turning fresher too.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
39 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? It's 21 minutes to go. But there's loads still here on GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. And it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are Labour under the thumb of the unions? The Labour Party may only have been in power for a matter of weeks, but the trade unions already appear to be throwing their weight around to try and influence government policy. Is that not their job, though? Who knows? Union bosses have wasted no time in calling on the new government to allow civil servants to continue working from home. And Chancellor Rachel Reeves is set to approve a 5.5% pay rise for millions of teachers and NHS staff following fresh strikes. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are Labour under the thumb of the unions? Well, let's see what my panel make of that. Author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and journalist Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly, what do you think?
Hi. Your two Labour representatives on that little round-robin panel are quite correct. Obviously, the origins of the Labour Party is to do with trade unionism. But I think that they're not under the thumb as much as they previously have been with previous Labour administrations. And I'll qualify that. Because it's such an overwhelming majority of seats, parliamentary seats they won. They don't necessarily need to have that relationship with the unions. They've got overwhelming support from the country. And also, it's rather myopic, in my opinion, to assume that people who voted Labour would necessarily need a trade union. So many people who voted Labour won't have any interest whatsoever in trade unions. And Keir Starmer knows that. Keir Starmer, a lot of hard-left Labour supporters don't like Keir Starmer's sort of central or maybe even to the right of the centre of the Labour Party. But Keir Starmer has positioned himself there because he knows the people who voted him in aren't necessarily all union wallers.
Christine Hamilton.
Well, I would question that he has the overwhelming support of the country, Danny. He got 32% of the vote. He got the overwhelming number of seats, but he actually got elected on fewer, I'm trying to get this right, fewer votes than... certainly than Boris.
I think it was from 20% of the overall vote.
Yeah, 30%. I mean, I can't remember who got...
But parliamentary seats, he's got a massive majority.
Of course he has, and he'll probably have some... what's the word? Rebellions because of it, because he feels he's already had some. So he can afford to take the whip away from 7 MPs, but he doesn't have the overwhelming support of the country. I mean, the days of beer and sandwiches when the trade union reps used to turn up at number 10 with Harold Wilson, etc., and they sat round the cabinet table, and because they were trade unionists, they got beer and sandwiches, apparently. And those, when they literally laid down the law to the government, I mean, those days have gone. On the other hand, what's happened to the 35% that the junior doctors wanted? I mean, that, to me, was a clear ploy. Political ploy against the Tory government. They were determined they were not going to give in under a Tory government, so they've come down from there. I mean, if they give a 5.5% pay rise to nurses and teachers, if the whole public sector gets that, and if the teachers and nurses get it, why shouldn't everybody else? It's going to cost £10 billion. So, I mean, it's a huge spending commitment, and you can only find money by reducing borrowing, or by borrowing money, which they can't because they're already borrowed up to the hilt, reducing spending or taxing.
But they're not dependent on the union support. They've got such a parliamentary advantage. They're not dependent on them.
No.
Whereas previously, it was a negotiation.
Not in the way that they... I quite agree, not in the way that they used to be. But if they're going to hand out these huge public sector pay rises, they're going to have to pay for them. And how are they going to do that? They're obviously going to... I mean, what is it? The top 300,000 taxpayers pay 30% of tax. There's a limit to how much the top-rate taxpayers can pay for all these vast sums.
I don't think they're as potent, the unions, this time round.
No, I don't think they're as powerful, no.
Well, I mean, this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices then. Let's see what they think. It's their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. I've got 4 of you. I'm going to start with Lee Webb in Bedfordshire. Are Labour under the thumb of the unions?
I think it actually depends on what union they're under the thumb of. Certainly the Steelworkers Union, they're not under the thumb of. Certainly Unite Union, which do our all workers and things like that, they're not under the thumb of, because they're totally ignoring those jobs that they're going to waste through net zero. And things like the National Farmers Union, they're getting rid of loads of farmland, making it harder for them to work. And so, therefore, they're not under the thumb of them. I think some of the state sector unions, totally, they are under the thumb of. But private unions that do private businesses, no.
All right, Alan Cook, what do you think in London?
Hi, Nana. Well, I don't think they're under the thumb because they're actually hand in hand with the unions. So they're part and parcel of the same thing. It's where their funding, their money does actually come from. They've got into government by pretending to be a low-tax centralist party. However, you know, Keir Starmer is as hard left as the unions are as well. So it's the wrong question, really. It's
I make up the questions. Don't tell me what's wrong. Let's move on.
Of course, yeah. But no, they're not under the thumb.
I hate it when people do that. You ask them a question and they go, it's the wrong question. The question you should be asking. Yeah, go on. You've got 10 seconds to finish that off. 10 seconds.
This will snowball. They will give this money away because it's a socialist government, and they will just borrow and they will tax more, and then it will start a snowball effect, and then the other unions will want more money as well.
Sounds like the Conservatives anyway, to be honest. Let's go to Dan Bryan. He's there in Hull. Dan.
You're being bossy today, aren't you? It
Not
is the
unusual.
Right question, Nana. Labour has always been hand in hand with the unions. I do agree with what the other gentleman was saying. But the thing is, they've removed one of the policies that was to make the unions provide a minimum service during strikes, and they're taking that away, so they don't have to do that anymore. So if they're not careful, the tail is going to be wagging the dog.
Exactly. That's a really good point you make there. Julie Ford in Bedfordshire, are they under the thumb of the unions?
No, I don't think they are under the thumb of the unions. I agree with the other panellists here. I think it is a hand-in-hand situation. But also, we've finally got a career economist in charge of, the Exchequer, which I think is ideal. And obviously, she's going to be looking at it from the financial perspective, whereas previously the chancellors may have been looking at it from a different perspective. So, no, I think they're hand-in-hand. And I do think that the pay rise for the NHS and teachers is very much welcomed, as long as it goes to frontline workers and doesn't go to the back office staff who are already on $100,000 a year.
All right, thank you so much for all of your thoughts. Lee Webb in Bedfordshire, Alan Cook, a bit lippy Alan Cook in London, Dan Bryan in Hull and Julie Ford in Bedfordshire. Lovely to talk to you all. Right. Next up, though, you're going to do it as well.
He won't be invited back next Sunday, will he?
The trouble with socialism, as Margaret Thatcher pointed out, is that eventually you run out of other people's money.
Well, that's right.
It's all very well handing all this money out, but it's cancel net zero. That would be a really good thing.
Well, perhaps we could have told that to the Tories, who didn't appear to be Tories at all. They came out with net zero, let's be honest.
They invented it.
Right, but next up, it's time for Supplement Sunday, where the panel and I discuss some of the stories that caught their eye. Stay tuned.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle has reportedly finished filming her new show for Netflix. It aims to celebrate the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining and friendship.
Yeah, this comes after Prince Harry's Netflix documentary, The Heart of Invictus, failed to hit the right note with viewers missing out on the top 10 in the streaming charts.
So, will this next venture be a success? Well, joining us now is royal commentator Kinsey Schofield.
I know I've talked to the both of you about Meghan Markle potentially running for president, so this feels like a bit of a dud to go from Meghan Markle running for president to Meghan Markle's Netflix series about friendship and cooking. So she's wrapped this recent show. They rented a home near hers in Montecito, so that as their cooking set. And they're saying that this is really make or break for Harry and Meghan when it comes to their Netflix contract.
Do you think, Kinsey, it's fair to say that Meghan Markle has proved to be commercially a bit of a damp squib? Even in America, her native homeland, she's kind of Oprah without the audience when it comes to the cooking. Also, is she kind of, do you think... They saw her as the golden ticket, didn't they, to unlimited revenue, unlimited audiences, and it just hasn't happened.
Look, I think Meghan is a beautiful woman, and I do think she's talented, but I think how you treat people is incredibly important. And not only was she rumored to have been cruel inside Kensington Palace with several bullying allegations, but here in the States, Archwell Productions, their audio section, their scripted section, they've gone through several employees. And I think it's a reflection on the way that people are treated there. And I think as a viewer, you might get that. You might feel that way. And maybe that is where the appeal has been lost.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Danny is chuckling beside me. I can't wait for his supplement because it's time to Supplement Sunday. This is where my panel and I discuss some of the news stories that caught my eye. If you just tuned in, welcome. I'm Nana Akua. Joining me, Danny Kelly and Christine Hamilton. We are towards the end of the show, though, so you should have clocked in sooner at 3 o'clock. But, Danny, what have you got for us?
Well, listen, this is a great story if you're a Muslim living in the UK and you don't like living in a secular state. There's a hate cleric who is trying to get together £3.5 million to buy a little island off the state, off the coast of Scotland, and it's an open invitation for all Muslims. He wants to turn it into an Islamic state where Sharia law will be practiced, so us three won't be welcome. And he's desperately trying to get donations. And just to really just give you an idea of this, he already runs military-style training camps, but hopes he can build his own school, hospital and mosque on the Scottish Isle, where everybody would practice Sharia law.
Where did you read that? What's that?
This was the Mail on Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I
Christine Hamilton.
I'm sure he'll raise the money, but he might as well save himself the money because the whole country will be a Sharia law state.
No, come on.
Well, it won't be long. You wait.
I don't think he's allowed to do that anyway, is he?
What, buy an island and impose Sharia law? No, I wouldn't think. Scotland is part of the UK, as far as I'm aware, and it comes under British law, so he wouldn't be able to do that.
Anyway.
No. So he is wasting his money.
Maybe it's just a scam. He wants the money. He wants money. Give me £3 million.
Oh, maybe he's one of these sort of American-style preachers.
Anyway, Christine.
Well, I found this. The real reason that elderly drivers are a danger. It's all the pills they pop, apparently. The number of pills they take. The more tablets old people take, the worse they are at the wheel. And they've judged this by the number of times they slam on the brakes, which can increase the risk of an accident. Those on the most drugs, 14 or more a day, imagine being on 14 drugs a day, are the most likely to do it. Pensioners alone, 5 million pensioners are on at least 5 drugs a day, and then they list what they're all for. So, I mean, it is a serious point, but they say a lot of it is because they affect your tiredness level, they make you sleepy, etc. It's called polypharmacy, when you're on a lot of drugs, polypharmacy. And I bet a lot of these older people are on those drugs because they've been on them forever, and they actually probably don't need all of them anymore. But have they been able to get a doctor to reassess them and decide that they don't necessarily need them all? Probably not.
It's ironic,
but it's not because they're bad drivers, it's the pills.
Well, that's it. So basically, they're all on drugs. And if those drugs weren't legal, you'd been arrested, wouldn't you? But they are. They're as high as
slows reaction time.
Well, listen, my supplement is this one, and this is about a BBC commentator who apologises for talking over the national anthem. A BBC commentator apologised after it was ahead of the Olympic hockey match between Great Britain and Spain. Kate Richardson-Waltz, a former GB women's hockey captain, was broadcasting live. This is from the Telegraph, by the way, from the Yves de Manoir Stadium, and answering questions from BBC presenter JJ Chalmers on the previous performances of the males hockey team. However, they started talking over the opening notes of God Save the King.
How dare they?
Scandal.
Isn't it?
Scandal.
Terrible.
Off to the tower.
Well, it's pretty not on.
Yeah.
It's basic rule number one.
Yeah.
Wait till the national anthem's over.
Yeah, at least don't sing over the king, for goodness sake. Who do they think they are, just because they're on the BBC?
Imagine if Lineker had done that.
And you haven't even mentioned the BBC
Not
yet.
today, I haven't.
Oh, my God. All that you've driven 90 miles.
96 miles south and 96 miles north, and I used to work at the BBC. 18
there you
Did
years.
Go. There
you
go.
watch the opening ceremony?
Nah, I didn't watch that.
Oh, I started, I didn't finish.
Well, on today's show, I've been asking, do you trust Labour with Britain's finances? And according to our Twitter poll, just 6% of you say yes. Oh, dear. 93% of you say no. I've got to say a huge thank you to my panel, author and broadcaster Christian Hampton. Christian Hampton, thank you very much. Lovely to see you again. And also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to you at home for your company. I'm off next weekend, but we'll be somebody superb will take over. But next up, it's time for Neil Oliver. We'll leave you with the weather. Have a good week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It stays mostly settled the next couple of days, particularly hot across the southeast of the UK thanks to an area of high pressure. It generally stays close to the southeast, but this weather front will move in across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland to give some patchy rain later in the forecast. But for the rest of Sunday, plenty of warm sunshine ahead of dusk across much of the UK. Overnight, we'll see thickening cloud across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland. 1 or 2 patches of light rain, but most places staying dry overnight. Clearer skies for England and Wales. A few fog patches forming towards dawn. And temperatures, well, for towns and cities staying up in double figures. A little fresher in the countryside, but it means a beautiful start for most on Monday morning. Though there is a weather front just moving into the Western Isles to give some patchy rain here. Across the rest of Scotland, a bright start, some hazy sunshine. Similar for Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures starting around 14 or 15 Celsius. So quite a warm start to the day. Northern England into Wales, plenty of sunny spells. The rest of England as well. Here, temperatures approaching 20 Celsius in the London area at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then through the day on Monday, plenty of sunshine across England and Wales. Just perhaps an afternoon shower developing across the high ground of Northern England, southern Scotland. And this weak weather front just stays to the northwest of Scotland, so perhaps further rain through the day across the Western Isles, making its way towards the Highlands by the end of the day. And temperatures widely getting into the 20s, the mid to high 20s across central southern parts of England, close to 30 Celsius for London. So a fine end to the day on Monday across much of England and Wales. This weak weather front does push its way southeastwards across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then generally the outlook is fine and settled, but the increasing risk of thunderstorms Wednesday into Thursday, turning fresher too.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could become the next big Great British Giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
On the day that I got the money in the bank account, everything just seemed a lot sunnier.
But I do have something to spend it on. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. Thank you, GBNews.
Amazing feeling to win.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, fellow travellers. Here we are together again. Welcome to the Neil Oliver Show on